Welcome back to the Detroit is Different podcast studio. And in studio, I got a brother that is for sure part of the Detroit is Different family in many, many, many ways. And ain't been in here in a minute. But it's always great to have him back in studio because every time you're around them, you're going to get some game. And the game meaning information as far as what's happening in community, especially from a political lens and development lens. But this also impacts just how neighborhoods function, what's happening, and so much more. That alone should give some people a premise of who I'm talking about. But with Detroit People's Platform, definitely Detroiters for Tax Justice as well, and so many other efforts that are just really on making sure that citizens are empowered as a lot of corporate interest starts looking at what ways they're engaging in community. With that being said, Theo Pride, how you doing?
What up, though, my brother? I'm doing good. Happy to be back. I see, man, the studio's looking great.
Yeah,
I see
you
did a lot here, man.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate the work you do, brother, all the time.
Always. And also rocking red.
For
Husky,
sure. Red
people.
dog.
Exactly. The Huskies. The good old Huskies.
That's right.
They say. So in the mix of that, so many different things happening. Ain't had you in a minute. I know when we spoke, it was more so like, hey, it's a couple folks that I'm thinking may want to touch base. And I'm like, all right, cool. I'll definitely get them in. But furthermore, I need you in. And for people that know, we record this obviously before it airs. It's pre-recorded. But it's Juneteenth, not a better person to talk to on a day of freedom for our people.
That's right.
Good brother, Mr. Pride. And with that, I guess you said we're definitely going to talk about some data centers. We're definitely going to talk about some new developments. But let's really begin with the wave of kind of your opinion, your analysis on what's happening in and around the city of Detroit. Last year was historic for the city of Detroit, being that we have Mary Sheffield taking office as the executive of the city. So definitely black folks back in the seat on the 11th floor leading the city of Detroit. But more than that, first woman to take the helm in leadership of Detroit. And in that wave, certainly the election results came back in huge in support of Mary. Mary, from leaving that council background and actually even making that transition, is the first that's done that in years, decades actually. When we look at when Ken Cockrell Jr. was there, it was more so through appointment. So. So this is someone that certainly knows what that I think what is it 2 Woodward address, the CA Watt Coleman A. Young Municipal Center, very familiar with that and so many other things. Let's kind of start there. She's worked with people on many different things, stood in place. What did it feel like, you think, just as a whole, that election and what it will mean to the city just when we look at that moment of time? Because I also think that has been crystallized and highlighted because what 2024 meant to a lot of communities, but specifically black women. And now we see a black woman in leadership in the city of Detroit.
Yeah, it was historic. It was historic. First woman mayor of Detroit. Also, too, let's address the elephant in the room, right? We've had a white mayor in the city of Detroit for the last 12 years. This is a historic black city. It's a majority black city, the largest majority black city in the United States, has been for a while now. And we had a white mayor for more than a decade, coming out of some hard times, emergency management, and also it wasn't a Detroiter. Let's keep it real. Wasn't a Detroiter. Was a suburbanite. Came in and did his governance thing. I think that a lot of Detroiters would put forth a lot of critiques, a lot of criticisms. Some Detroiters would put forth some glowing reviews, right? Where I stand on it is that while we have experienced some development here in the city of Detroit, you can look at downtown, you can look at midtown, you can look at some adjacent neighborhoods, but obviously a lot of our neighborhoods have not felt the positivity, if you will, of that development. So I think even when you look at the numbers, inequality, right, has grown in Detroit and during the Duggan era. And I mean, you can chalk it up to him, not necessarily being from right? The community, being from and of the people. But it is what it is. And so I think with now Mayor Sheffield, right, coming right into office, we have somebody we know who is right from the city. She grew up on 7 Mile in Livernois. She was city council president for a long time. She dealt with a lot of hard issues in the city. In my opinion, right, me being a community organizer, trying to look at progressive policies that move the envelope for working class, low income, majority Black communities. She did a lot in that area, right? She pushed forth affordable housing. She put forth inclusionary zoning. She was a supporter of the more progressive version of our community benefits ordinance. She was for water rights. She was in a lot of the good fights. Right, the righteous fights, right?
Yeah, I always raise up like Right to Counsel as a project this project that Detroit is Different has started this year is touching base and interviewing people from across the nation that are Detroiters. And one of the first questions is always like, so what's up? And then I uplift like, okay, these are the things where she definitely still with people. And I mean, even like some of the like, what would I call it? Initiatives that are like kind of beyond what I to say like the auspices of office that carry over, the Occupy the Corner and, that Occupy the Block movement. I mean, even today, it's going to be an event she's doing with Sauce Walker, you know what I'm saying? And has some of these relationships with people that many don't, but certainly. And then, as we know, just the family legacy alone and what her grandfather stood for and some of the works of her father. The roots are certainly a lot more known as far as what and where and which.
Absolutely. Even that, right? Occupy the Corner and now Occupy the Summer with Mayor Sheffield. That whole event to me represents her cultural competency, right? Her roots in Detroit, being able to pull off an event like that for young people, it being relevant to the community. In terms of the folks she bring out, right? She had Skilla Baby come out, having those relationships. That's and so not here to disparage folks and so forth. I don't know if the prior administration would have those type of sensibilities to do something like that. And so just to be able to see an event pulled together like that for our young folks, for our families who really need those kind of those spaces to connect with folks, to receive those resources, right? To be a part of community, to be a part of community with our leader. Right, with the executive of the city of Detroit, is meaningful to be embraced, and to shake hands and just be a part of the community in that type of way was really huge.
Yeah, and she's been running it for a while because I remember in council, I think this even predates her being president possibly, but early on, she did one of those like closer to my neighborhood, like right across from New Bethel. And if you know anything, New Bethel, historic institution, but also New Bethel is, the neighborhood is very, it's a lot of street culture that exists over there as well. Let's put it like that. You know what I'm saying? So it's, you know what I mean? So I'm like, all right, we here. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, okay, I didn't, and I was like, okay, there go Pastor Smith, Victor Muhammad. I'm like, okay, we here. You know what I'm saying? And it's for sure the people in the neighborhood, certainly making sure that they're fed, as that's one of the locations that always, New Bethel stands with feeding a lot of people in the city. And I guess we can kind of, on that same point, transition to this. You touched a little bit on the income disparities that do exist. So clear, like most times when we had these conversations, certainly on my heart, most is Detroit, but I also have to like look in the macro. Some of this exasperation of a lot of these things that are happening, it's on a national scale for many, many reasons. I'm sure, and usual, we'll be able to like box through and explore a lot. But I can definitely tell you what's real between sometimes passing New Bethel. Clearly I'm in the Focus Hope neighborhood, so sometimes I Focus Hope, but just even to the Madonna Catholic Church over here, giving away food. But the food giveaways, as when I had Portia of Focus Hope in here, like when COVID was happening, it was like, okay, I see it. this is good and making sure that people are getting taken care of. I'm, we're in my mind a lot past where COVID was.
Yeah.
But a lot of those lines for food distribution are just as long.
No doubt.
Everywhere across the board.
No doubt.
And like I say, my neighborhood also has like Cass community. So like it's a couple thoroughfares. And then, you're seeing as what's, raised up, this is working poor. Cause like the people in the cars and all of this stuff like this, you know what I mean? And I'm not necessarily casting any shame towards a person that's in a tighter struggle for whatever they're dealing with as far as sustaining their quality of life. Food being very key in that, but it's been a little bit of a it's been heavy to watch it. So I just want to get your perspective, because I'm sure you're seeing this too.
Yeah. A few things, right? You talked about the macro level. Like obviously, like Detroit and our communities don't operate in a vacuum, like isolated from other parts of society, what's going on. And when we look at what's going on the federal level, right, I think what we've seen, right, under this administration is an attack on working class folks, right, poor folks, in a way that we probably haven't, right, seen in concentration like this before. Like working class folks have had it hard for a long time. But when we look at some of the direct policy decisions, right, we can clearly see that resources have been taken from the bottom and funneled up to the top in terms of the dismantling of social programs, social safety net programs, right, food programs and the such, and given to folks at the top of the socioeconomic ladder in the form of tax breaks. And so what happens when you take a group of people, a population who's already stressed out financially, don't have enough for housing, don't have enough for childcare, don't have enough for health care, and then you further take away, right, programs to help with that. You put folks in, of course, a tighter situation, which then brings us right back to Detroit. And I'll bring Mayor Sheffield back into the conversation. What has Mayor Sheffield did, right, in her first, right, 3 months in office, 4 months in office? She has made an intentional effort to center everyday Detroiters, right? Detroit is the largest city with the highest poverty rate in the country, right? We obviously have high rates of poverty that affect our city, right, in significant ways. Mayor Sheffield has recognized that. She has a whole system, right, in government dedicated to addressing poverty and making sure that folks, right, have safety nets, have options, have resources. And so that's what is needed, recognizing that there's a lot of stuff going on. If other levels of government aren't offering the type of social safety nets and resources our people need, we got to do it. We have to do it somehow. And obviously, downtown is doing really good. Corktown is doing really good. Other parts of the city is doing really good. What is wrong with making sure that folks pay their fair share, taking some of that prosperity, right, and providing opportunities for everybody so that the growth in Detroit equitably benefits everybody? And so, I think that's something that Mayor Sheffield is thinking about, something that his administration is thinking about, and I think it is a great change in direction. Sure.
So when you say that, even more, like, I guess we look at the retrospect of looking at things in the macro, and we're not that far, like real close in graduation. So like when we talk about some of these changes just into what Detroit families are experiencing when myself and Theo were beginning in public school, lunch, you pay for lunch, and certain students will have vouchers and things like that. Yeah. And usually, definitely making the options of, probably don't need to be making as kids buying snacks and stuff. But during our high school, it was a time where they just rained out, where it was like, look, it's enough students and families throughout the city of Detroit that are experiencing what these vouchers could be, that we're just going to have lunch free for everybody.
That's right.
That happened while, like, so when we think of, like, when we're in high school, so that's like 20 plus years ago.
Yeah. Programs like that is they are what the city needs to be thinking about in collaboration with the state, the federal government, and so forth. Because, like, we have to be honest about the city that we live in. This is not a Manhattan, right? This is not Chicago, right? Like, Detroit is a working class city. With blue collar moxie, and we have high levels of poverty, right, and concentration in ways that are much different than other cities, right? And when I say concentrated poverty, I'm talking about whole neighborhoods where 30, 40, 50, 60% of the people live below the poverty line, right? And so we need programs that recognize that say, you know what, at this particular school that is embedded in this community, right, where the poverty rate is 60, 70% and so forth, we need a program to make sure that everybody here gets free lunch. Every kid here gets the ability to access food, right, education, all of those type of things. And so, you know, my perspective is the government has an incredibly important job to step in and make sure that folks that are kind of ravaged, if you will, by capitalism, by market processes, that the government steps in and makes sure that everybody is good. Everybody has what they need. And if that's free lunch, and if that is vouchers, and if that is housing, that's what folks deserve, and that's what folks need.
Yeah, and when we think of this wave of the Sheffield administration, a couple different things. First acts, certainly at Mackinac, you know, addressing poverty is a growth strategy.
Yeah,
and it's so interesting because certain things, like I like can take for granted the commonality of some of these things because I've seen it so long, but definitely in a setting like that, for certain people, they're looking at it like, I've never necessarily heard this, you know. It's like we're saying the quiet part out loud. And it's like, nah, this is real. Like, I mean, some of the like what I say, like some of the hustles that happen and everything, it's it really, I mean, it's a sitcom, but it's real. You know what I'm saying? Like I say, it's like I love the Good Times theme song, but you don't want to see that in reality. But in reality, it's a lot of just, you know what I'm saying? You know, all them like things JJ used to do, like, but stuff like that be like, oh yeah, that's what we doing. You know what I'm saying? Like this is an opportunity that we can, you know what I'm saying, look at working. You know what I mean? It's unique. So like even her speaking to like, look, we're gonna need to look at helping I mean her inaugural, well, the like I guess the inaugural ball or whatever, and it's like, okay, we're gonna take a lot of this money and go directly into supporting the houseless population here in Detroit, which she stood there before in issues when she was in council. I mean, I want to say she was one of the few to like be like, look, not only do I want to go over to where Tent City is, I want to start building relationships with the people here. You know, so that's something that has existed. And even stepping up and saying like, look, we're going to provide, you know, we're going to provide benefits and care for mothers during that first 18 months after pregnancy. And I can see that even expanding. One of the key things where I believe a lot of this was possible was the people she put on the transition team. She had so many people in there. And I talked to Brian White, who's the deputy mayor, about this in Mackinac. And it's like, she has some people in there where, as we say, like, some of these problems people can just, hey, you talk to them.
That's right.
Connect.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? Because it don't make no sense to do this. I mean, you've clearly done that often with me, and you know, I've said the same thing where sometimes it's just off the hand. It's like, look, y'all doing the same type of work. Y'all need to know each other.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
And it wasn't just like a room full of millionaires.
Right.
It was people organizing, you know, community organizers. It was people leading, you know, nonprofit organizations. It was really a mix because it's going to be different. And I think many, certainly as a lot of the people that stomp hard for Detroit People's Platform are looking at a lot of things that that the mayor of New York, Zohan Mondani, is doing, but it's a different landscape, as Jared from Daily Detroit brings up. It's so many billionaires in New York.
It is.
You could do things like, hey, we're going to overtax them and it can knock out some programs.
No doubt.
I mean, the state of Michigan may only have like 6 billionaires. So let alone like one city
Right.
like a New York that has, you know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
you can
a whole neighborhood of billionaires.
I know, yeah. You could run a full football team. You know what I'm saying? 11 backups. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like going against each other. You could run that. You know what I'm saying? Where you were playing a good game of horse by yourself with the billionaires in Michigan. You know?
Yeah. One thing I want to bring up, like just to kind of piggyback that idea of the transition team. I think what it reflects is that Mayor Sheffield has incredibly diverse political tent. She is in conversation with and in connection with nonprofits, progressives, activists, organizers, everyday folks, folks at the senior homes, youth advocates, as well as the business community, right? As well as philanthropic organizations and so forth. And so I think that big tent allows her to make those connections, to put people in spaces that they haven't been in, so you can do that collaborative work, so you can build coalitions that help people do that work easier. But just go back to looking at poverty as a growth strategy and how do we address poverty in meaningful ways. I think that is the right inclination. I think that is the right approach. But if it is articulated and if there's an ask by the powers that be that private organizations or corporations lead that charge, I think that is a losing proposition. Because we've seen the proliferation of we had a segment on that, public-private partnerships and so forth. A lot of times what happens is because corporations and private entities have an undue amount of influence in whatever decision-making sphere, right, they may be in because of the money that they have and the capital that they can raise and so forth, they end up taking over that partnership. And the public-private partnership becomes a vehicle to further private interests, to further the interests of wealthy corporations, wealthy individuals, and so forth. Again, I'm gonna go back to the statement around government having an incredibly important job in making sure that folks are protected and folks get what they need, and that these processes that we see are equitable. Nothing precludes the city of Detroit, and like you said, like we don't have a whole bunch of billionaires. We can't do what folks is doing in Manhattan and in New York and so forth. But we do have a very affluent and prosperous downtown,
and that kind of brings me to another key question, because like I say, same neighborhoods, and this is still looking at a lot of the variables in the equation, and this is just real. Recently, actually, they may drop concurrently, so you may watch Council President James Tate interview, then Theo, or vice versa, or whatever. But I'm even speaking to this with him in our interview. Like, I love my neighborhood. I'm Rosa Parks, Davison, for real. I guess people may say, like, Hope Village Revitalization, the CDC, that's the Community Development Corporation. I'm a board member there. Like, you may define it as that or Focus Hope, but I mean, you may define it as 12th. You know what I'm saying? All depending upon how you look at stuff. I love it. And in my whole life, I've been over here for so long. I love being over here. But in that, I also recognize that it's been people that I know that feel trapped here as well. So in addressing poverty and providing some solutions for certain residents, a lot of residents then choose to move to other places. They may move to the suburbs, and it's for multiple reasons. Council President Tate was like, look, I don't want anybody to feel trapped, and I agree with him. I don't want anybody to feel trapped, but that's another question that I kind of got to run by you, because you do have so much history studying things in economies as an economist, like in that lens. But oftentimes people end up with better amenities and then they leave.
Yeah, I hate to kind of be like super ideological, but we really do have to look at the system of capitalism and how they create these conditions, right? If you rely on the system, and if we find ourselves in a system that takes everything and makes it a product to be sold and bought, water, electricity, housing, childcare, healthcare, and those type of things, right? You're going to get a whole bunch of unevenness. Right. And because neighborhoods are a commodity in the system, like neighborhoods, right, will experience that type of unevenness, that uneven development. And that's what we see in Detroit, right? We see very, very disinvested neighborhoods juxtaposed to, when we go downtown, right, invested neighborhoods, prosperous, affluent neighborhoods, right? In the suburbs, the same thing, and so forth. And so the question is, then how do you address that? How do you address that in meaningful ways, in ways that allow folks like me and you and other folks to stay in the city that we love, but we don't want to have to be, right? We don't want to deal with the ills of poverty that come along with some of these the neighborhoods that Detroit has, in terms of education, in terms of services, in terms of aesthetics, blight, all of those type of things. I'm gonna go back to the power that government has, the power that government has to intervene and make some of these things equal. Nothing precludes, right, the city of Detroit from making sure that the resources downtown and the economic development downtown, right, gets taxed in a certain type of way, right? And that can go to the general fund. We have a downtown development authority that sucks up like all the property value and keeps it downtown. But there is a way in which to phase that out, right? And create a more equal distribution of resources. Nothing then precludes the city of Detroit from earmarking that money that is generated downtown by those billionaires, right, by those stadiums that we publicly invested in and so forth, and saying, hey, that money has to go to these particular neighborhoods to make sure that everybody has housing, right? Everybody has access to food. Everybody has access to education, right? And these particular resources. So what happens when you take, right, an area that is super commodified and making super money for billionaires and say, hey, we're going to make sure you're enjoying, right, the fruits of what the public has done for you, providing infrastructure, tax breaks, all of that type of stuff. There's roads here, water. You benefit, right, from the public, right? You need to pay your fair share, and taking that prosperity and make sure that everybody has basic access, right, to housing, right, water, right, and things that people need to flourish and survive, right? The government can do that through public housing, right, social housing, and the like.
And as you speak to that, naturally, what I'm uplifting is what I've witnessed most of my life, and I do know that there is initiative, and Hillary Doe is leading the Move Detroit initiative, which really it expands. And it's been uplifted from the mayor's administration to move, stay, return. So there is the value of like keeping the people that are here, getting people that live in other places to move here, and also looking at people that have been in other places to return here. And it's definitely waves in that have happened. I'm more so speaking strategically from a lot of what I witnessed my whole life. So, I mean, I'm 43, so this is including really post-Coleman Young, like how I can remember it. So this is Archer administration, Kilpatrick administration, Bing administration, like where people look at like, all right, I got something, so now let me get here and maybe still work here. And what does exist. And when you talk about the DDA, something else, and it's like we talking Mary Sheffield a lot, but Mary Sheffield is one of the people from like when she was in her post as city council president. I remember like explicitly her seeking counsel for council, meaning that the attorneys that represent the city of Detroit on behalf of city council, and her asking Mr. Whitaker, what would it take to transition and not use the DDA. I know the question was asked. I'm sure she has the information and what that looks like. Lord knows, I think that Attorney Whitaker, from everything that I've seen in handling things, is usually definitely a crossing the T's, dotting the I's kind of guy. You know,
Mm-hmm.
and that's also part of this. Something else Tate speaks to. Part of this, but it needs to be like that in law. But like, you know, a lot of these ordinances and laws and agreements, like when you read it, you're gonna need Theo Pride next to you to be like, all right, what the hell is this talking about? You know what I'm saying? Because it includes, you know, a lot of the jargon that's needed over time, just due to how things are. So the city's in positions to make sure that it's not taken advantage of as well.
Mm-hmm. Let me chime in on this, just to let your viewers know this is just not like a pie in the sky. What I was talking about in terms of how do we tap into the prosperity downtown to make sure that our neighborhoods can benefit. Yeah, right. The people who are most economically challenged can be lifted up, and they can have access, right, to basic needs type of stuff. Right, is that. A lot of the stuff that you were talking about with David Whitaker and LPD and so forth, the research, right, and the policy prescriptions that, right, the city has produced clearly says that, right, the DDA has to pay off debt, right, before it can be dissolved, right? The first step to doing that is putting a moratorium on new debt. That's the first thing that has to happen. But what we have seen is the DDA issue more and more debt, right? This is going to prolong, right, the lifespan of the DDA. That moratorium has to be put on the DDA so we can be thinking about, as a city, right, how do we spend down? How do we pay down the debt as quick as possible? As soon as that debt is paid down, now we can start to think about, you know, do we want to dissolve it? Do we want to sunset it? Right now, how do we think about the taxation structure downtown? You can even impose a downtown tax. Right, you can impose a downtown tax. Does it need kind of certain state legislation to pass and so forth? Absolutely, but that is an option. So there are real policy directions, right, and the policy approaches to make sure that rich folks downtown who have benefited, right, from our public dollars in a majority Black city, right, pay their fair share, right, so our neighborhoods can benefit.
And part of this, and you've raised this up, check the archives of Detroit is Different. Just type in Theo Pride. You'll get some information on this about like the taxes of what's downtown captured within the boundaries of downtown. So meaning that, like, yes, taxes are being paid, but due to the setup of this authority, it's supposed to stay there. Now, the other key about this, the DDA, is, you know, this is created certainly in a Coleman administration, because that's, you know, a lot of people be like, Coleman Young was the person that did it, but it was a different reality of what was happening then of, you know, in a Coleman administration, you know, his election triggered a lot of things. And thank God for the records and archives of Detroit is Different. And Shelley McIntosh even shared, like, it even, like, he's, at the day he's elected, you know, a lot of, immediately, the Detroit Police Department was like, we on strike, we ain't doing nothing. You know, which led to a then Executive Coleman Young getting on the phone, calling Reverend Jeramogi and saying, like, hey, we're gonna need some of your soldiers in red, black, and green to come on down here downtown and do some security patrolling. As you can imagine, very soon after, many of these striking officers found their way back to their desk in their post. You know, so like we're looking at a different reality there that establishes this. Absolutely. In the same scope, I guess, you know, people could even say like what exists with the land bank as well, but like different entities created at times when the politics of the way and what's happening to citizens feels and looks different.
Absolutely. Let's go back to the 70s, right? You talked about it being a different time, much different time, right? In the 1970s, you saw incredible amount of you can call it white flight, but it was also too economic flight.
Yes.
Right. So folks with money was leaving, right? A lot of white folks left, absolutely. A lot of businesses left as well. In 1974, right, you get the investment in the Rent-Cent. At that particular time, right, it was the largest, right, skyscraper investment in the United States. So a hell of a lot of money, right, going into this downtown piece, right? But at the same time, capital is fleeing the city. Right, the population is dropping, right, at record rates. Coleman Young is in a situation where he's trying to revitalize, rejuvenate, right, our central business district as businesses purge and leave. Like, you got to remember, in the 1950s, right, in the 1960s, downtown was hustling and bustling, right? You had Hudson's downtown, retail, it was hustling and bustling. By the 1970s, right, that is being gutted out, right? That is being decimated, right? The establishment of the DDA was to incentivize, of course, capital to come back, right, to restart businesses and to support the rent cent, which was a huge investment, right? Now let's fast forward 50 years, right, to today. That's not the case, right? That's not the case. Dan Gilbert has come in. He's bought all of Detroit, downtown Detroit almost, right? The Illages have bought the other side, right, of downtown, right? So you have billionaires who are incredibly invested in the success and the prosperity of downtown, right? Capital is starting to come back. Investment is starting to come back, right? The purpose of the DDA was to kickstart, right, downtown development and the downtown economy. That has obviously happened. The DDA has fulfilled its purpose. Now it's time for it to be sunsetted. Right.
Yeah. And I love that you gave that perspective, because oftentimes, I'm a big context guy. So like the context of how, and I think right now, as I say, even when looking at the larger scope of America, and even you speaking to like what's happening federally, one of the, when we think of like even the 70s and the impacts of that, in a lot of ways, Detroit has been Detroit has been almost like a peek into the future of a lot of American cities.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
As for a lot of what Detroit has gone through, and I'm going to say, like, over this past about 100 years. Yeah, let's say 100 years, from like 1926 to right now. Yes. This past 100 years Detroit has been one of those windows to look at, because even when you look at like that mid-20s to the 50s, certainly looking at the internet, the World War conflicts, and the role, Detroit, Michigan played in actually becoming key manufacturers of weapons used in World War II. And I mean, I'm gonna just be 100 with you. Definitely, many of those weapons went to the Allies. Certainly, one of them being America, but a lot of those weapons also went to the axis of evil as well. And then post that, this lens of industry and what industry represented, which I really think that I'm getting in my history lesson, Kari talks, but I really think that some of the key initial waves of what makes the industrial age begin to blossom in America, I would say, are like when railways are created, which has really a direct relationship with the Civil War, because the northern colonies, I definitely don't necessarily think that these were more virtuous men or anything. It was just more so like, we see the future of what's going to happen being more in industry. Yeah. And obviously these southern territories of the United States said like, no, it's going to still stand in agriculture. This is one of the key reasons why the Civil War is hashed out and everything happens for it. And even the whole concept of like, okay, if you're a state here, you need to be more industry than what's going to be agriculture. Those tensions are more so exasperated with when we look at Missouri and Texas, and a lot of things happen in, Louisiana Purchase and all of this. This creates the framing of a lot of things. Thank God we're looking at a Union Army winning and the United States moving forward, especially from the history of our people. But even within that, now that lens of industry kind of puts the dominoes in place for so much of the future of not just America, but the world, because now industry is seen more as a gateway and not agriculture. And to a lot of growers, they're like, why did we give up on this? I don't necessarily think that. I think we put a lot of industry into agriculture. But this also frames education. It frames what success looks like. Sure. It frames what people pursue in this time. Detroit it is so key in this because of, at one point in time, the Big Four, and it's peaking in 1950s of like almost 2 million people.
Yep.
That turn hits in a lot of waves of, like, I think in the 80s is very prevalent, rest in peace to like a Vincent Chin incident or whatever, because it starts looking like, one second, industry is still happening, but these American companies are doing business in industry in other places.
Yeah. You know, like you said, I think Detroit has been a place where the rest of the country has been able to kind of peer into the city and to see what is to come. Detroit was heavily industrialized. When we think about Rust Belt cities, like Detroit is the epitome of that. When you look at the post-World War II boom, Detroit certainly benefited from all of that economic activity, which led to, like you said, in the 1950s, Detroit, being a huge city, 2 million people, 2 million residents, and it was also the richest city, right, in the United States. So all of that prosperity, but then also too, like that part, how are we able to kind of peer into the future by looking at what happens, like in Detroit? So what happens when deindustrialization, right, happens?
The wave of it, I mean, it's here, but so many places. I mean, Flint, you can look at Roger and Me, you know what I'm saying? But like the waves of what this is.
Right.
And even you look at, like, I guess, people say it's more entrance into the global power, but a lot of the entrance of that global power was the fact that, like, we have labor movements here. And that Detroit is so much of the heartbeat of, like, so many of those labor movements. And the way that it superseded was like, we'll go to this nation and pay these people 1/10 of what we was paying y'all to get the same products.
Absolutely. And another thing in terms of, like, Detroit being, for lack of a better word, like experimental ground, right, for policy and direction and so forth, as we think about industrialization. So it happens in Detroit, it happens in a big way. You get the explosion of unemployment, you get the explosion of disinvestment, all of those type of things. And like you said, by the 1980s, like, we're having to deal with these gutted out neighborhoods, right? The lack of public revenue on the city side. How do we provide services for a city with 1 million people, but it's supposed to be 2 million people here, all of that type of stuff. We got 140 something square miles. It's really, really hard. And then fast forward to, right, the 2000s, right? And so it's some economic hardship, and then all of a sudden bankruptcy.
And in that, other waves, because certainly the attacks on the labor movement, I think, clearly start here as well. I mean, I don't know, you can Google a lot of this, but I think, you look at some of the things that the Rockefeller business did to things, but I mean, manufacturing here was almost like, join the union, we'll kill you. You know what I'm saying? So, like, these waves exist here. And then a lot of, we've talked about this before, like, as things leave, now these public-private entities are in a lot of ways, it's like, we need this. Hence the school system being industry. I mean, you look at these old schools, they look like what the old factories were, because in a lot of ways, and I bring this up a lot, and, in a more recent interview, they was like, but things can change. But the public education is given to Americans to transition the agricultural worker into an industrial worker. That was the goal, the public good, and we want our children to have an opportunity to better themselves. That was not necessarily it. It was, you have people that are used to the flows and ebbs in agricultural work, some of them actually dying, while in these factories for many reasons. I mean, OSHA, the labor movement thing, OSHA wasn't around way back in the day, but it was more so that, like, these, people have to learn so that we can get them into factories, hence the bells and the flow, you know what I mean? You look at, like, a Packard plant, and then you look at the first drawings of Central High School, and
Absolutely. Yes, it's a lot of studies out there that show that, even the school bell ringing, right, is to condition people for, right, the time shifts on the factory and so forth. But as we think about kind of these shifts and these movements and these historical changes, right, we go from agriculture. Now, how do we set up society in ways that produce industrial workers?
Yeah.
Industrialization, right, in the United States has peaked off. It has declined. It's probably not coming back. That's my opinion.
I would say that, like I say, we about the same age, and our whole life, I think every gubernatorial candidate leads with, we gonna bring them jobs back.
Yeah, we gonna bring
and my
them.
whole life, it's, let's put it like this. It's definitely been ways where, like, some corporations have come or anything, but like then you talk to an old head and they be like, man, I dropped out in the 8th grade and then, I just went from factory to factory to factory. That was never the case in our life. Now, I think definitely during our lifetime, it would be like, this is pre-phone. Like somebody call you, be like, hey, Chrysler hiring in 2 weeks. You need to get down there. Like you may get that phone call and turn it into a text, but that wave, even I want to say after the buyouts, that's more so rare. That's changed, and I definitely want the point because it's gonna transition right to something I know you're gonna speak on because we've transitioned from this industrial age to the information technology age, which changes, I think, the arcs of what success looked like. I think the Henry Fords, the Van Burens, the Rockefellers, like, Andrew Carnegie, the arc of what success looked like to them was saying like, yep, I got 15,000 workers in Michigan, 20,000 in Illinois, right here in my home state of Pennsylvania, I got 150,000. Yep, that's what we do. That's success. Whereas now success is, I've said this before, it's probably being in a room this small, me and Theo and a bunch of computers behind us, and we are making more money than those operations back then did before. Now, also with this, as I say, more money, the value of the dollar has it ain't the same. So like, even as I think Elon Musk is being listed as a trillionaire, it ain't even like what Andrew Carnegie was doing back then, just due to like positioning of really America post World War II and where everything stood, of resetting the map for everything. So
yeah, I think you bring up a really important point, right? This transition from agriculture, industrialization. Now we in the technology age. Like now, what does society have to do to prepare for that? But then also too, the differences. I'm gonna use the word like our plutocrats, our oligarchs, right?
I mean, that's where I've always we ain't got enough bandwidth, but I always say like capitalism is not what's enacted. It's always been an oligarchy as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. So those robber barons, right? The wealthy elites. How are they different, right, from back in the day till now? The main difference is what you talked about. Like, so Andrew Carnegie, right, Rockefeller, they had productive industries. They were making things, right?
Yes.
They were making coal, they were making railways, they were making steam engines, they were making cars, they were making planes, tangible material products that lent itself to use values in society. Those are the things that we use. And folks had jobs. Today's industry is much different, right? And if you kind of look at the history and the literature, it starts in 1970, right, with neoliberalism and so forth. Yes. And what it does, it leads to the financialization, right, of our economy. And with the financialization of our economy, lending, right, banks, right, the stock market, speculation begins to create most of the value. And so you brought up Elon Musk being a trillionaire. Most of his value, right, is asset speculation. Definitely. So he has these companies and they do this, they do whatever, right? And now you have the stock market, who is controlled by billionaires anyway. A couple of, 401ks of workers and, average everyday people are in the mix. But for the most part, right, is controlled by other billionaires, right? And so they manipulate the market to their advantage, right? So they do these evaluations, they speculate on the value of these assets, right? And it sends the value way up. So on paper, right, you have $1 trillion, but you have not made anything, right? It has not produced anything tangible in society, right? And that's the kind of economy that we find ourselves in. You got a lot of people making a lot of money, right? But there's nothing of substance. So nobody actually have jobs connected to, right, these industries and these processes on the other end. And so we find ourselves looking at a lot of prosperity, because you look at the stock market over the last 4 years, it's boom. But unemployment, right, has been set in place. It has increased. Poverty has been very durable. Like, folks are suffering, right? Inflation is going up. Folks are finding it harder and harder, right, to make it. But the economy is growing because it's not attached to anything tangible on the other end for everyday people.
And even scarier, and Lord knows we're getting all the way there in business financial talk. So, predating myself and Theo, we look at President Richard Nixon, and it's famous. As America transitions from the gold standard to what exists now, which I'm one of those people that, yes, I'm going to say it. I'm pretty sure one of my WASH professors would be like, you can't say that, but I'm going to just say it. I think this is a debt standard, meaning that bonding capacity. So if people kind of understand the thought process, meaning like our bonds are more valuable than what gold is. And really, when we look from a federal lens right now, that's one of the most dangerous things amongst all the crazy things that are happening in this administration. But federally, a lot of foreign investors, nations themselves, have been selling a lot of their United States bonds. And in turn, America's been buying their bonds back. So for a person to understand this, a bond is different than a stock. This is like 101. Basically, with a bond, you're buying debt based on like, okay, this will over time, and this was what it was always sold as, this is a safer bet than a stock. So you buy this bond, and you're guaranteed to get this money as it appreciates over the time of whatever the term of this bond is. You're not going to make as much of a yield in this bond because it's not like you're chasing and seeking the profit of buying a stock where you just keep your, what we make, you keep making money. It's going to exponentially grow. That transition that Richard Nixon made then, and then you couple that, especially like with Reaganomics politics, it set up a world where, as you talk about producing things, like it starts kind of driving down that street right then. Right now, it's completely exasperated, especially when we look at the success of who's in those markets. When you talk about 401ks and like a BlackRock, which it's not just specifically BlackRock. There are other operations look to follow that same suit, but they're indexing the work. What BlackRock's for people, and more of this, I've done taxes for years with my dad's practice or whatever, but like slowly but surely, I would say maybe about like 7 years ago, like all the 1099s I'm seeing are now BlackRock. There used to be a mix of these companies, but BlackRock creates like really the concept of like the safest way of investing. We're going to index it, meaning like we're not even going to specifically buy one particular business. We say all these businesses are together. We're going to buy the same amount of shares in all of these businesses over time. We're going to use that, and we're going to be as reasonable with all of the bets that we make, which has created the reality where like savings is nowhere. I say this in my Toy New interview, and it's probably happened for you. When I was like 6 years old, my grandma opens a bank account for me, and it's a savings account because I'm a kid. She puts in $100. A year later, I got $110. Like, the reality, just due to the way the indexing goes, they'll just specifically tell you at a bank account, you can get a savings account, and that is overdraft protection. But if you're thinking that you're going to put money in there and get a return on it, just due to the way that how the market is set up right now, that ain't happening. Like, the amount of money you got to put in to get a return.
It's a lot of financial wizardry going on.
You
Right.
got that right.
And I'll connect it to like what's going on here in the city of Detroit and some of the work that we do. That right, and I'm gonna go back to capitalism. Like what happens when the central mission, right, is to make more and more money, right? Whether you do that scamming with the banks, right, speculating on assets and so forth, the mission is to grow money, right, and to get richer and richer. Property is an asset, right? And when you create a economy, a society where 60%, 70% of the wealth is concentrated into the hands of 1%.
Yeah.
Now they have the power, the undue amount of power, right, to control the investments that occur, right, in society, what we see in society and so forth, whether that's housing, healthcare, or what have you. And that's what we're seeing, right, at the neighborhood level, at the city level. The developments that we see is not the developments that we want. Right? The developments that we see are the developments that get the investors and developers richer, right? And they're not doing it necessarily to provide a service or a particular resource, right, or provide a housing need to people. They're doing it simply, right, just to make money. So they'll build a luxury condo. They don't care if anybody really stays in there. I mean, they want rent. Some of it is contingent upon rent and rent profit and so forth. I'm not saying that's not a real thing, but the bigger thing, right, is that now that building is an asset that can be speculated on. Right. So I built it for 5 million, 10 million, 20 million, whatever it is. I want to drive and I want to accelerate and intensify, right, the land values and the property values in this area as much as possible. Right. So I'm going to engage in a whole bunch of wizardry. Right. And I'm going to manipulate markets. Right, because because I'm a billionaire, I private equity and all of those type of things. I'm gonna make sure the property value keep going up in this area, right? And so now that $10 million asset or what have you, now it's 75 million, now it's 100 million, but on paper. Now what can I do with that, right? As the owner of that asset, I can take out a loan, right, against right the value of that asset.
Yeah.
Real money. Now I can take that asset and do other things, right? And so it's a scheme, right? But the important part is this: who controls investments in our communities? Are they for us? Do we need them? Do they help us? Do they benefit us? Or do they benefit, right, billionaires?
And see, this is where, like I say, like I like you say wizardry, but like, and that's what makes so much of this more difficult. And I speak to BlackRock because right now that would be looked at as like the beacon of how you need to make and look at investments.
Absolutely.
And just due to how they have the platform that, you know, they license that's the Latin software that basically evaluates whether this is going to be a good or a bad investment. So this is where, even like, as you say, like, who's at the seat, sometimes even if we get at the seat, if we're working within these same systems, we'll never get access to it because the what they're looking at as this is the right decision to make.
Right.
That's what's going to happen. And I mean, and it's tough because just before our eyes, so much has been taken away. And that's why a 401k is so much more risky.
Yeah.
Not just on the rate of your return,
right,
but in just even what's going to happen, because it's not like, and I'm not saying that, you know, this is the better thing to do. It's not like someone's like, all right, let's look at these companies. Let's walk in. Let's look over what's happening. I like what's going on. Let's meet with them. No, by indexing, it's like I'm going to buy every one of these organizations. I don't know. Let's just throw it on. You know, I like hats too. I'm going to buy every hat maker in America, and we're going to buy 5% stock in each one of them.
Yeah.
By default now, even though I don't have 100% stock of any of them, I'm not held to any of the standards that any like majority shareholder would be held. But whatever I say or whatever I do, if, you know, it can just be executed and followed. I mean, and when I say this, I'm definitely not in a world trying to like demean or slander who Larry Fink is. I think that like a lot of the forces at play just in the market itself create that. Larry Fink is the CEO of BlackRock, but you know, annually he writes a letter. Whatever's in that letter is going to dictate a lot of how corporations are going to move, what's going to happen, because the thought process is like, damn, it's investment in all of us that list here. So when you talk about that neighborhood development being put up against like, this is what should happen and this is the right way to do things, and it involves certain dynamics and characteristics and just cultural competencies that only you and I know.
Right.
It's, I would say this is like, it really ends up being in a rock and a hard place at this point in time.
Rock in a hard place, absolutely. But I think a lot of it comes down to, this is kind of a cliche, but like the political will, right, of folks in leadership, and folks' ability to imagine, like so what information, right, are our leaders getting, folks who work internally in government who supposed to be thinking smartly and intelligently about all of these processes, neighborhood development, community development, economic growth, and so forth. Like if you go to school and you just train to like, hey, the market is God. It's about top-down private investments and let the market do its thing. I think that's a losing proposition. That's what we've seen over the last 50 years, right? And what it has done is led to a great deal of inequality and a great deal of unevenness between places and spaces and so forth. I'm gonna go back to government, right? The ability of government to intervene and step in. If the market cannot make the neighborhoods and the communities that center people and that look out for us, then government has to step in and do that work. Again, nothing precludes government from doing that work, right? Governments can set up grocery stores. Governments can set up nonprofits. Governments can set up housing. They can set up businesses. They can, right, they do public transit, school, all of those type of things. They can intervene and then construct and build the kind of communities, right, that center people and don't necessarily build communities so somebody on the other end can make a whole bunch of profit.
I definitely agree. And to that point, it's so unique. This past December, I showed up with Detroit is Different for this event, Toys for Tots. And I don't know if a lot of people know that. That is a nonprofit organization that is a nonprofit of the U.S. Marine Corps. It was started because post-World War II, one of the sergeants or generals comes back, recognizes like, damn, a lot of these kids, you know, their fathers died in this war, but we still want to like, you know, get some kids. So like it kind of started as like a let's get some toys to the kids, you know, on the block, and then others saw it and it was like, okay, let's expand it.
Right.
So this is just an example that what you speak of can definitely take place. Even one of them, when you talk about housing people, I mean HUD at the root. Now it's certainly gone through so many iterations, and a lot of it, I think HUD should certainly look at building stronger bonds within the communities where it's present. But just, you know, the community block grants and what HUD exists, I would go as far as to say so many of the multi-unit buildings, not just in Detroit, but specifically in Detroit, have a lot of HUD funding that was right there to start it.
Absolutely. Think about this. Like, what if average everyday folks, right? And this is like not like a means test. Like, oh, you like everybody had access to housing. Everybody had access to water, right? Everybody had access to certain utilities and so forth. And whatever you were spending on housing, because you know, think about our folks, right? Our folks are incredibly house burdened. And so what I mean by that, what percentage of their income do they spend on housing? We're talking about folks spending 60, 70% of their check.
Yeah. I mean, and they always say that like technically at most what you pay for your rent should at most be about 25%. That's just like what is said. Now with it, when we look at median income, and I don't like that always being looked at. The concept for affordable housing we're looking at is like $1,700 plus, like $1,750 when we're looking at like
which is nuts.
a two bedroom, which actually in our community, a 2 bedroom, usually we're looking at a mother and child or children, not, like 2 roommates type thing, or 2 incomes within within the two room space.
Mm-hmm.
So and then even like the lines where affordable is drawn up, and that's always been, I think I've said this too many times, I think it should be mean income more so evaluated and not median income, because median income, it's the middle point, and
Right.
If Shaquille O'Neal buy a house next door to you, guess what? That's Shaq, you know what I'm saying? Because Shaq's a $100 millionaire, and you know what I'm saying. So now the median income on my block just went up to, I don't know, $75 million a year. You know what I'm saying? Just from one person, and HUD is certainly one of those close examples, and definitely our current president and even his son-in-law, the Kushner family, got some horrible history with it, because within HUD, that first 25 years where you're supposed to, be engaged with community, actually have low income housing because the government provided you all these subsidies.
Right.
A lot of these people will keep their properties slum-like conditions.
Mm-hmm.
They know that the 2 year, they know like 2 years up before they no longer have to honor what's happening with HUD and who can be in there. All right, cool. Let's renovate everything.
Right.
Get these people out, because back to, like you say, we're speculating on what the value of this asset will be.
Right. And then I want to go back to like this idea I had around like folks just not having an imagination around the solutions.
Yeah.
When you look at folks in the housing space and you try to address the unaffordability issue, what most folks will tell you, so-called expert, is that we need policies and we need programs to stimulate more capital investments in the space so we can build more housing. That is not the issue. It's not that we don't have enough housing. We actually have enough housing, right? We don't have enough affordable housing. But those are kind of market sensibilities. Like, oh, if we increase supply, right, then price will go down. That is not what is going on. Mostly because, right, the housing is a commodity. They'll always want more and more money for it, right? There's housing downtown right now sitting absolute dormant and vacant.
I would say it's a lot.
Exactly, and the price is not going down because they don't care about who rent it. They just want what they want for it, right? And they betting on the market going up and so forth. So it's not about building more units and so forth. What it is about, when you really look at the numbers, what it is really about is the decommodification of housing, right? And what I mean by that is when you take housing off of the market and you say, this is not for sale, for profit. This is simply just whatever it costs to build, right, and provide, that's what you got it for. Right. And when we look at areas where they have community land trusts, which do that, right, take money off the speculative market and offer affordable housing in perpetuity, or we look at social housing projects in places like Vienna, right, in Europe and so forth, and other places that do social housing and public housing. Those are the type of initiatives that stabilize housing markets and drive prices down and ensure affordability. And so if governments, right, at the local level, state level, what have you, aren't thinking in those terms, then we will continue to run around in circles trying to figure out, how do we create more affordable housing for people? And the answer is simply, this government needs to step in and decommodify housing, period.
It's definitely become a commodity. And scarier, and this is actually one of the very few things that this current federal administration did where I'm like, okay, that does need to be addressed, is the fact that, like, during COVID, so many corporate real estate businesses transitioned into residential real estate businesses.
Right.
You know, you probably drove down the street and seen a Berkshire Hathaway lawn sign. You know what I'm saying? You never saw that or I never saw that pre-COVID.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right.
So that certainly, when you talk about sitting on and speculating what property can be, yeah, definitely. If I was in the commercial real estate, now I enter into this residential market, I may sit on a property for 300 years and never sell it.
Absolutely.
Because I don't have the same incentive as like even that, you know, let's say like the community landlord that may have like 3 or 4 properties, you know. I do think that more should definitely be uplifted about occupancy rules.
Yeah.
I think a lot should certainly be lifted and looked up. And you know, I'm exploring more of like, as they say, like the mixed income dwellings.
Yeah.
I think that is, you know, that can become something very cool. And the concept is like this, because if it's just all low income, due to due to a lot of the stressors that poverty provides, you're heightening the tendency for a lot of things that, you know what I'm saying, aren't gonna create you know, that quality of life situation that I think a lot of people want. Where and it goes kind of right against the whole thing we heard, you know, all the rappers be like, you know, the only people that stay here was the dope dealer and the pimps, and you know what I'm saying. So like that mixed income dwelling becomes more of the community that I think I've heard in these stories, and I'm sure Theo has heard. Like, yeah, you know, the doctor was in there, and this person was in there, and and I mean, at one point in time, especially Black communities, that was even present in housing projects, just due to the lack of access that Black people have for housing. But it does create a different reality when, you know what I'm saying, you do have that mixed income, and what does it look like? I also am one that consistently believe, and this is, you know, some people say altruistic, but I'm not even against like that sliding scale price type thing. You know what I'm saying? Meaning like if I go to a concert and it costs me $100, but then, you know, the guy that's bringing his 2 sons, it only costs him $20 a ticket. I don't necessarily look at that as like as unfair. I think as sometimes a lot of economists present, that's what would happen.
Yeah, mostly because I think a lot of economists are trained in a way to prioritize market profits, right? And like business interest. So when you have ideas that would then attenuate, if you will, the ability of like a business entity to make as much profit as possible, then that's a bad thing, right? But that's one way to think about the economy, right? And that's what I mean about the imagination. How do we inject more imagination, creativity, right, into these think spaces, right? When I was in college, I was, you know, I would call myself a political economist, right? I studied the economy, but I didn't study it, right, in this kind of laissez-faire way, right? This Milton Friedman, Thomas Sowell type of way. Understand it, right? Never made sense to me. I understand the economy more in a social way. Right, the economy isn't a machine, and right, this forces right, you know, causal in this type of sense. We're social people, right? Like we're social, and because we're social, things are unpredictable, right? Things are constructed, we make our meaning and so forth. So all of those complexities have to be right injected into this space. And I think that analysis of humanity, right, is missing from a lot of the economic thinking and policy that is put forth, you know.
And it's so weird too, because I've been recently nerd out on a bunch of stuff, clearly, but I've recently like, okay, let me look at a little bit more of Adam Smith and what gets him to right Wealth of Nations. So Wealth of Nations is the book that, you know, I guess you would consider the Bible of what people speak to this concept of capitalism is. And even his life, what he faced and kind of like getting to that, you know, even the whole concept of like that invisible hand, meaning like supply will always meet demand. That was not really more so the premise. A lot of his perspective, as I'm looking at, was really more so built on the society of it. And saying, like, how do you leverage, as, you know, his mother had struggles as he was growing up. How do you leverage and empower the customer at that time to navigate a lot of what would be considered in that time the mercantile industry, like the merchant? So how do we balance this relationship between merchant and customer? But clearly, centuries ago, old Europe, a lot of stuff's different. You know what I'm saying? So it's hard to like even take that and apply as in today. You know what I'm saying? You gotta, you know, similar to like the Bible. You know what I'm saying? There's certain lessons you can apply, but I don't think you're ever gonna be, you know, sitting down for dinner like Paul or Peter. You know what I mean? In today's era, we got refrigerators. You know what I'm saying? So that alone changes it. And I think very similar to it is very social. We're social creatures. It's going to impact stuff. And that's one of the toughest things about so much of that has happened all in my lifetime that I know leverages more towards what I consider like the oligarchy, just the way that you don't even necessarily even have the same humanity. It was a point in time where now, I know I'd be considered like a granddad, but like, you know, it was a point in time where it was kind of tight. You know what I'm saying? My mom would be like, all right, come on, we're going to go to DTE and we're going to interact with, or back time, it may be Edison, you know, we're going to interact with this person about what's happening and what could be worked out. And I'm not necessarily saying that it was like social workers that were there in those offices, but at times those offices felt like social work. I mean, I definitely could say like that. The DTE office on West 7 Mile was one of those places and spaces that, you know, you're going to interact, you're going to engage, you can get more context. A lot more can be looked at. Whereas now, you're not interacting. I mean, you're going to call that 1-800 number, and the probability of even getting the same person to pick up when you call the next month, that ain't happening.
Absolutely. I think the other thing with how we look at the economy and how it has been stripped of a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of important critical analysis is that folks who study the economy, they try to put forth that it is like a natural process, right? The economy is a natural. And if you can concretize that in people's mind, right, now you can justify the accumulation, right, of capital and money, right, into the hands of a few. So you look at somebody like Elon Musk, or you look at somebody like Jeff Bezos and right, Bill Gates and all of the rest, they get to hoard all of this money, and all of the money filters up to them. And they get to make the argument and impress upon society, right? This is survival of the fittest. This is natural, right? I won, right? This is a naturally occurring thing. And so it justifies, right, the inequality. But if you look at the economy, right, and in political terms, political economy, right, it's about power, how people use that power, right, to create systems and processes that benefit them. Everybody has an interest. My interest is not the same as Jeff Bezos, right? My interest is not the same as Elon Musk. We have diametrically opposed, right, material interests. They use their power, right, to fulfill, right, their material interests. That is the politics of it. So if you look at the economy, right, in terms of power relations, now you see that, oh, this didn't naturally happen, right? It's not the forces of supply and demand and market processes. It's the way in which you have manipulated, intervened, interjected, created laws, created policies to ensure, right, that you get this money, make sure that you hoard this power, right, and all of this power is concentrated right at the top. And that's what I mean about the type of creativity that we have to bring to the space. Let's recognize that this is not natural. We as people who make our own meanings, right, who can sit down and change things, right, in terms of policies and laws, we can make laws that then interrupt these things, right, intervene and create more, right, equitable processes and outcomes.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree with everything you just shared. I certainly think that the position we could play and what can happen, we're not being as creative as we can be. And even like those terms and conditions. I mean, I know it's like on a small level, the whole like I don't mind paying more.
Right.
It's it's many things in process that do exist there, and making things commodities, meaning like you're to make it a commodity, you're taking out that social element. And I'm going to say the social element is the number one thing for business, period, to exist. I mean, during our lifetime, and it's, my studies are and collegiate studies are in marketing, but like, it's even like the discussion, and you'll like this because I know it's similar to the hot and ready thing we've done before, but like many marketers are very upset and angry with Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, because the thought process is like, clearly, yes, you all created this platform, but the value of this platform is from us using it.
Right.
So now to turn around and change the dynamics of how it was used and what we have access to these algorithms and things. And I've listened to like so many exhaustive like speeches and presentations and lectures on this. And it's one hell of a point the more you think about it. The value is like, yes, Meta, you put forth you have the infrastructure for this. You created this. A lot of people watching, you probably listening through Spotify or watching on YouTube or whatever. They created that.
Right.
The value of it was because we, as population and people, we poured into it and created it to become something that's valued. So now to just act like as if it's a commodity and you did more in this or not. No, this is a reciprocal relationship. It's not as transactional. I think that a lot of actors and corporate actors in this industry look to make it feel like.
Absolutely. Yeah, let's not get it twisted. The system of capitalism is extractive by nature, right? It is exploitive, right? What it does is it subjugates people, right? Based upon how much money you have, your ability to own the means of production, the ability to reproduce yourself materially, right? And it uses that power to exploit people, right? And take money from the other end, right? And accumulate, right? All of that power, right? Our mission is to, as a society, acknowledge that, understand that, like, dang, this the system that we live in, and organize to put forth a better system. Because right now, the system that we have, it prioritizes profit, right? The ability for people to make profit over people, period. Right? What is most important is the ability for folks to make profit, right? And if that undermines the well-being of people, then so be it.
And see, that's where, I guess this is where me, you, Bob Malik, and Yusuf or whatever part ways, because I've seen it too often with Black businesses that are making profit. But the superseding rule ain't profit. You know what I'm saying? The rule ain't profit. I mean, in our lifetime, and I mean, Lord knows, I'm of the era. I graduated 2001, so I like it. But Master P is a classic example of that. Hey, nothing but profit coming. I mean, it was to a point where, I think my mom could have dropped the album on No Limit and it probably would have went platinum, you know?
Yeah.
But the control dynamic, especially when it comes to our people and others, I think that supersedes the profit and money thing. It's been too many times where I feel like I directly see, okay, if it's all about money and this power and control, nah, we gonna rewrite the rules for that Black guy, that Black woman,
right.
You know what I'm saying? This brown guy, that brown woman, right. Sometimes just you ain't owed money. One of the key things that was always brought up, and it was so interesting because some of my professors at Walsh College have been those people listed in like, richest list and stuff.
Yeah.
And this is what they would always say. It's so funny. They would say, sometimes that's why I don't even like working, in places that are, have gone public.
Yeah.
Because basically what they're saying is that, and this is just the truth, it's so many private-based companies and corporations that go far back. I'm talking about pre the United States of America. And you'll never even know how much money they got because they never are going public. Now, they've invested in a lot of this stuff, and that right there is another one of the key elements that I think make this more of an oligarchy than that whole capitalism concept, because it gets to a certain point where you're going to need investment. Investment's going to come from all those people that were already at the table. You know, one of the worst stories, I think I may have even said this on the podcast, but it just stands out. During some of those classes at Walsh, you ever go to the movies or Burger King or wherever you at, and you see that machine that basically you fill it with, you know, a lot of, like, I guess, the water, and then you got these syrup solutions that come out and make it. As a person that has worked in fast food pre this, yes, thank God for that machine, because it'd be horrible trying to, like, hook that stuff up and everything. And, like, you basically can, like, press a button and you can get any of these flavors. My professor's like, yeah, man, the guy that did that, man, he was just actually doing something different on the side, but, you know, he used a couple things from Coca-Cola and they did it, but, you know, clearly, because he worked with them, they own the patent and then they executed it. And, you know, and then he got more Linden and you know, it executes. So it's like, damn, that's not good. I think one of the worst ones was the Post-it notes from 3M, because, you know, if you look at that, you're like, damn, 3M, if you really know, they're like, they make building materials and stuff. So one of the guys that worked there worked in a Bible study, and he was like, man, you know what? I can go in the office, get some paper. I know this glue solution. And then, you know, I can mark this in my Bibles for Bible study. And they found out about it. They were like, this is really cool. Other people buying it. It's like, great. He used their resources, used their lab. They got to get the patent.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing I think that always ties it, because you're going to go back to, like, some roots of something that have been connected to this nation, usually far back, that go back to the exploitative nature of, you know, our people being enslaved and, the hostile relationship of what happened to a lot of the people that were here, which I think, yeah, a lot of them were black folks that were here, not what we would consider natives. And then also just, even the Boston Tea Party, not paying back the loan. A lot, it's so many families and private interests that you don't even know how much money it is, because they've been off the books for so damn long, you'll never know.
Absolutely. And to me, that's the problem with capitalism. Like, capitalism, it rests on this premise. It's a bunch of things. And I hear you, like, talking about, like, the definitions of capitalism, how you understand capitalism. And I can kind of share with you, like, what I think about capitalism, like what the definition is. But some of capitalism, right, it as a system rests on this idea of the sanctity of private property. Right. And so that can be an idea, right? That can be capital, that can be, right? And so if I own it, right, you have no claim to it, right? This is all me, right? That mountain is mine. Yeah. All of the gold in there, all of the water, all of the earth minerals, it belongs to me. I don't care if you are dying of thirst, right? I privately own that thing. You cannot have a sip. And so, you know, how do you then create a system by which individuals own, like, resources and property, but all of those things have been built and constructed collectively. Like, you bring up the history.
Facebook,
Absolutely. You bring up the history even of slavery, right? The taking of indigenous land, the taking of labor power, right, and value, right, from Africans. All of those things have crystallized, right, historically over time as capital into the hands of corporations and so forth, who have done A, B, and C with it, created this innovation, all off the backs of theft, right, and exploitation. Like, how do we understand those processes and so forth? And then and how you rip and you disengage and you disconnect, right, those pieces. You say, well, private property. Private property gives me the right to singularly, individually, like, own these things and not consider, right, these other pieces, right, of equality.
And I think that's one of the key dissonance that I always uplift about this nation itself. Because, you know, a lot of tribes, like, the concept of property ownership and a lot of ownership is way more of a Western ideal. So, like, you're walking into spaces and places where it's like ownership doesn't exist. And the sad thing about it, even right now with so much of the deed fraud, check the archives of my interview with Anthony Adams speaking a lot about it. But, you know, in the travels, I the guy I was talking to, it's a brother that is the chief editor at Amsterdam News in New York, right in Harlem. And he's like, yeah, man, we're running a series on deed fraud here too. And like what exists just through like paperwork, it's like, yo, yeah, now I own something that may have been in your family for forever. Or like, I mean, the real tragedy in New Orleans, it's like, yeah, you own the home, but the land in which that home was on, you don't own that. So like you can try to go out by sea and see whatever pieces of that house you can get, but this property right now is owned by, you know, this group, and it's gonna transition to that. We gonna auction it off. Like those things are certainly so tragic. And then even with stuff like that, I mean, that's where I haven't seen profit always come to life. There's been so many examples where I think thriving Black businesses have been in spaces and positions where, you know, they were in that lease to buy situation and things growing. I mean, and then the next thing you know, you no longer even is in here. Recently, somebody you definitely know well, but Nicole Small is talking about a lot of what her brother went through, Darnell Small.
Okay.
And he's on multiple venues. And I remember the story because it's like, damn, I do remember that. I remember being in there. And it's like, no, you got to get the hell out. Even though this is profitable. It is active. We see what's happening. You're getting the money.
Right.
We just don't want you here.
Right. You know, I think the thing with Black businesses as well is that, like, we live in a system of capitalism, but we also live in a system of white supremacy, right? They interact with each other, right? They are mutually reinforcing. Like when I say capitalism, I mean white supremacy as well. It is.
I got you. You see it hand in hand. Whereas I may see more of the hegemony more so than the, you know, like even like how I look at democracy. Like I think that's extremely theoretical as well. Like has it been times where like, oh, that snapshot exists? I think one of the most corrosive things of capitalism, you know, they're going to always speak this up, is like scarcity exists because no, scarcity is being created, which I look at that being more connected to the hegemony more so than scarcity ever existing. I mean, food is one of the we throw so much food away in America. And then to think that people, it's like people are still starving in America.
Absolutely.
We throw enough food away to feed not just us, but like maybe 30% of the other nations every day. And
not only that, right, we deal with high rates of childhood hunger. So those are the contradictions that like needs to be addressed. Like, how does that happen? We throw away metric tons of food that can be consumed.
Yes.
Right? But we also have a society of starving children.
And see, to me, that's like one of those classic examples. Like, if it's a restaurant I walk into and I have money to pay, and then, you know, it's like, hey, these families get vouchers every day because they hungry. Like, I'm not about to be like, I don't want to be in here with these people. Why? No.
Right.
Eat.
Right.
Please do.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Right. But how that happens is we don't make food to feed people, right?
You're right.
We don't make food to feed people, nor do we build housing to house people.
You are correct.
We don't do healthcare to heal people.
You are correct.
All of those things, and right, just we've been talking about capitalism a lot, but right, in a system of capitalism, those functions, those societal functions are there to make money. Right. And if those things are to change, right, we have to think about a more people-centered, right, economy, right, a more people-centered way of doing things, building institutions, providing the things that people need, right?
And that's one of the other critiques when we look at another one of these economic systems. Economics meaning resources traveling, looking at communism, looking at socialism. These are also examples that we see where Black folks are still in these same conditions. And that's why I see hegemony more so than, or supremacy more so is defining these systems than whatever arc of the wing we look at it in.
No doubt.
You know, so this is even like when critiques are made against, and it's so weird because some of this I know is, you know, I'm in media. So some of this I know is the stirring of propaganda. And just because I call it propaganda doesn't necessarily mean that immediately I think that it's looking to control you. But I think propaganda as created, and it's some good propaganda out there too, it's created to like provide context to something moving fast where like you're delivering a message. And I do think that like in delivering a lot of message where people will be like, oh man, these Bernie socialists, it's trying to like basically throw out any of the concepts that are being offered under the guise of like, you see, they don't care about us, even though there are critiques to be made about some of what's being presented. But also, we can't be dismissive about a lot of what's being presented too, because I mean, if I throw around like, you know, the critique back of like, well, you know, these I don't even know what we say, you know, these classic Democrats and what they do with black people, you know what I'm saying? Like the same argument is many more arguments that can be raised up about what quality of life will be looked at in these communities. So, you know, we being mindful of it, I think, is very key.
No, I mean, no doubt. Right, white supremacy is a durable thing, right? And so you can get rid of capitalism and still be left with, right, the ills of white supremacy, right? So you can have a socialist system that is, right, riddled with white supremacy and everything that comes along with it. But I think the argument for a more socialist economy and a more socialist society lies in the fact that every system has its pros and cons. Like you get rid of capitalism, that's not going to fix everything. And then you replace it with socialism, that's not going to fix everything. You're still going to have some problems. It's just about what problems, right, do you trade out, right? What issues do you trade out? And the thing with socialism, what it can provide potentially is what I said. The way in which government steps in and say, you know what? There is a floor you will never drop under. You always gonna have a house. You always gonna have access to food. You always gonna have access to certain utilities and so forth, right? So it's the difference between looking at a society that says, you know what, I'm gonna raise the floor for everybody and not necessarily focus on raising the ceiling for a certain amount of individuals, right? And so what happens when we have a society say, you know what, our focus is to make sure certain individuals can go to the moon, but we don't care about what's going on the bottom. We don't care about everybody else, right? Those people who go to the moon, that's great, but that's not the majority of folks. And so my thing is, this is like the motto that I live by, right? It's really simple. I'm trying to do the most good for the most people.
That's dope.
Right? And so when I look at socialism, again, not perfect. Socialism to me does the most good for the most people.
And I even follow that. And I mean, actually, also, you have the other thing that as I grow, I'm understanding so much more about capacity and bandwidth. So even with the most perfect ideas, if you have the endless pool of money, I mean, it's waves of how things are executed, because first, you definitely need the resources. So you'll need like the place to do it and the money to do it. And this is anything. Afterwards, you're going to need good people. And that's another one of those key things about good people. I consider you good people, meaning when I say talented and skilled people, and they're going to bring other people to it. But usually good people are going to sit back and kind of watch and observe a little bit before they join. And then furthermore, the other thing is they're going to want to join something where they also have resources to execute some of the plans that see beyond where you always saw stuff going. So sometimes it's like implement something now, as, you know, I look at, and thank God for everybody that supported Detroit is Different over these years, the people that partnered, you included. Like, it's like bandwidth becomes a lot more key.
Absolutely.
And then the reality too, especially like with young folks, because that's usually what you want. You want a good, young, talented person. I personally think, like, you know, it was probably already like a high turnover, and that high turnover doesn't mean like anything else, but like, you know, it's like classic sports teams, you know, you win the championship and now I'm a free agent, I'm gonna go to this other team and be the man. You know what I'm saying? Like, this happens like in organizations. You've been at the People's Platform for a minute. So I'm sure you've seen, like, you know, I mean, you probably got like a good 18 months to 2 years with like a very talented person that implements something, they do something, it's a success. And now, you know, people watching, they going to get offered things. And right now, the way stuff is going, I mean, you're getting offered stuff from across the country.
Right.
You know? So like, I definitely think like that team definitely executes. But also, even when we think about like all these systems and how to look at it, and I don't think it was that, but I guess you could say it kind of acted like that. But one of the best economic systems before leadership was assassinated, sadly, from our country, was Libya.
Absolutely.
The quality of life of Libyans, and like I say, I'm looking from the outside in, and a lot of stuff that I watch, but you know, you're going to through college at no cost, healthcare at no cost. You receive a stipend of universal basic income at no cost, all connected through, at that time, Libya is one of those nations that did refine its own oil. A lot of moving forward under then leader President Muammar Gaddafi, that quality of life was high for many Libyans. Now, since his assassination, and like I say, I'm not traveling in Libya every day, so I'm just reading and looking at multiple sources. You're looking at one of the most horrific and worst places for human trafficking across the world. The income disparities are extremely exasperated.
Absolutely.
And this is also back to like, I don't think that they are having elections or whatever, but they would say like, okay, the elections are back and this is what they want, versus what will be looked at as, a lot of from society and culture of this dictator. Like, so much of it back to like the bandwidth and capacity. It's like, what do we have to execute? You got to, I think, work the system that's best at executing, and people become so important. And I guess we can kind of close on that because you have been somebody that has worked with a grassroots organization for years. I can only imagine the amount of offers that you've gotten since you've been there, and probably still consistently get. Probably offers that at times, like people you liked working with and everything, but you've been committed and worked there. But also I've seen some people come and go. You've helped make some introductions. What has it been like from that lens in one of those positions? Like I'll put as you as like a team captain, in a grassroots community-based organization, and just looking at some of the talent, when they can stay, when they got to go, and what's it been like?
I think that to do this work, I think a lot of spaces are unique, and a lot of very specific things go into that space. But to do this work, to do justice work, you got to be committed. It is a type of drive to do the work that is just beyond you, so to speak, right? It is principle driven. It is driven by your desire to make the collective better, right? So it's a lot of principles that folks have to be in touch with, and it has to drive the work. At least that's right, kind of my opinion. Like you have to be principally driven to do this work. And so with that being said, absolutely, it's a lot of opportunities there. I come from academia. I've gotten opportunities to like come back to academia and so forth to do that work, but I love this work, right? And I found that right, it's a lot of purpose in this work. And what happens when, as we talk about, right, capitalism in juxtaposition to other systems, like what happens when you decenter, right, profit and money, and not to say we aren't right material. We don't depend on the materiality of society. Absolutely. Like I still got to eat, right? I still got to have a house to live in and all of these type of things. But at some point in time, you say, I got what I need. I got what I need. And what's more important, getting more or doing the work that I love? Right?
That's deep that you say that, because also that's one of those things, and I still want to pick back up and ask more so about like some of that talent you've seen over the years there, which is good. But that's one of those key advantages actually that organizations can take advantage of. Higher unemployment, I mean, especially like during my lifetime between like the '08 crash or whatever, but I mean, '08 crash, you may have a person that was running all the network systems, like working at Best Buy, helping you with one laptop to pick, just due to, yes, if you have higher unemployment, you're going to have people, you're going to get more talented people in whatever position it is. And if you have lower unemployment or people, I mean, we've had this talk after COVID, but I still bring it up. But, like post-COVID, everybody was running fast food. Like, man, people don't want to come back because it's like, well, they never really wanted to work there in the first place. You know what I'm saying? So now, you got to sit down, and now we got to have more of a reciprocal relationship and less transactional. It's like, I come in, but I got my kid with me. Yeah. So my kid gonna be in the store with me if you want me to come.
Absolutely.
Whereas like that's what happens when, I would say those that are seeking work are looking at what opportunities and options and have a lot of it. Whereas those that are hiring, if it's less, you can make whatever unreasonable demand. It's like, yep, we gonna need you to do a 12-hour shift.
Absolutely.
It's like, but I got kids. Hey, well, do you want to work or do you not want to work? Like you can have that imbalance that's there. And that's the other thing is I definitely think having purpose, because part of it, I think with your work that can be heavy is, I've said this to family members that have moved to Detroit and they're like, oh, I got to leave. I'm like, you got to be built to come here. I love my city, but I definitely know depending upon where you came from, it ain't going to necessarily function like that. Right. And especially in your work, it's going to be certain things. The heaviest is, and I did not like a lot of administration, how stuff went down, but Governor Snyder, because at the time, it was a bunch of my family seeing me and my big sister Dara debate, because Dara was like, he going to have to go to jail. I was like, Dara, it ain't, it's not fathomable. This white conservative man that was in some control of Gateway Computers is gonna go to jail. I think he's gonna have a walk of shame the rest of his life. He ain't going to jail. Right. And some of those people that watched that debate was like, damn, you was right. He not. And I'm like, I don't want this to be the reality. Right. But I'm just speaking from looking at things how I've seen it. I mean, I've seen our country go to, which the more I learn about history, I guess you could say, all of the conflicts America was in, we were in illegally and wrong. But I remember the W thing. I was like, man, they gonna blame that black man, Colin Powell. Yeah, he gonna lose all credibility himself, but people going to jail. I mean, I'm sure they smart enough not to go to a country that will honor the Geneva Convention. Now, if that happens, that's just, to me, on you.
Absolutely. You bring up an important point. We've been talking about systems and capitalism. I think the underpinning of a lot of that, at least for me, is power. Right? How do we think about power? How is power treated? Power culminates and is the result and produces much of the inequality that we see. Right? Are we as a society, right? And put it in the context of Detroit. Are we as Detroiters and as a city with a new administration in a position to hold people in power, right, accountable, make them pay their fair share, right, and make sure that they are operating in the city that centers everyday Detroiters, and make sure that Detroiters benefit, right, from all of the decisions and all of the development and all of the things that's going on in the city, because prior to that hasn't happened. Right? Like you said, Snyder wasn't held accountable. George W. Bush wasn't held accountable. Folks don't get held accountable because they are wealthy, they are rich, they are lobbyists, right? They control, right, the levers of power and so forth. But, right, just like I said, bringing in that human piece, right, into the analysis, people have power as well. So we don't have $1 trillion, but as a collective, right, if we organize, if we band together, if we have a strategy, if we know what we want, we can win the things that we want. I mean, and so, how do we build the power to hold these folks in power accountable?
I think, and this may be me talking in my altruistic way, but I think social capital is actually the most valuable, and it always has been. I mean, it's seen, an analogy I've used before is like the VIP. If a person's ever been in the VIP at a club or whatever, the reason you want to be in the VIP is because it's people that's not in the VIP. One day when those people not in the VIP don't even look up to see who's in the VIP, guess what the value of the VIP mean? It's us exalting. And I mean, I have many books. So, I mean, I have some of the Elon Musk books and all of that stuff, but I was one of the main people saying okay, well, his family has money from apartheid. I don't think he's really that wealthy. It's a lot of government contracts. I don't think he's really that genius. And this was back when I guess he was on what we consider the liberal team or whatever, making his cars. And I was like, I mean, China makes a better electric. I was giving all these points back then, and they was just like, oh man, you a hater. Due to his joining MAGA, now it's like a lot of people have jumped on a lot of the points that I've made. But I was like, no, I was saying that back then. He's not the talent He was presented as that. And if we accept it and honor and hold it up there, yeah, now we honor it. But, seriously, I mean, like the social capital is really, that's very heavy.
Absolutely.
And it can mean a whole lot over time. I remember Archives of Detroit is different. Like a Coleman Young administration, I mean, Charlie Beckham said, the FBI just at that point in time when he was dealing with what he was dealing with, he said, like, man, they had like something like tens of thousands of paperwork documenting what was happening with the Coleman Young administration, to the point where he said he had lunch one time with this, which clearly was like an informant agent compromised to look to get some corruption in the Young administration. They had breakfast one time at this restaurant. So under the guise of during that time, they said, we'll probably go back there. They bugged that restaurant for 2 months after. And I mean, they do this with the mafia as well, but still, but to just think of the exhaustive resources and to be an FBI agent or you have the tech contract to put microphones and stuff. This ain't like, you know what I'm saying? This isn't like hiring, what would we say? Like, day labor or anything. This ain't like, oh yeah, it's, a temp agency. These people are making exhaustive amount of money from, our government after a target is established. So in my mind, and you'll never see this, but I'd imagine the FBI probably spent maybe is what the equivalency of like $100+ million looking to find some corruption or indictment for Coleman Young.
For sure.
To think to themselves that like, damn, they had that many pages connected to this. We're bugging things for 2 months just on the probability they're just going to come back and have breakfast. And this is just from one person in the office. And I mean, and no offense, Charlie's real colorful if you get a chance to meet him or whatever. But like, I mean, I guess, yeah, it would be fun just laughing half the time, whatever he's saying. But if they did that to him, they had to probably do that to like damn near everybody else in that cabinet.
Absolutely.
So that is like to exhaustively spend that much money.
Yeah. As we think about these systems, of course, right, our leaders, our black leaders aren't treated the same. So Coleman had power for sure. But his power because of white supremacy is much different than what Mike Duggan had. Let's be real.
I was gonna say a Snyder or whatever. Yeah,
absolutely. But to go back to the idea of like social capital compared to like capital, I guess you could say. I agree. Like social capital is really, really important. But the important thing is that in the context of capitalism, capitalists don't need social capital. Right? They don't need social capital.
I think they do, but what they do usually it's like a unleveraged relationship with it. It's going to present it as they have more power and influence than you do. So an example I use for this kind of goes back to my music days. And Lord knows, I mean, I think he made some great music at one point in time. Then it just started getting really weird. But Kanye West is a classic example of that. Especially if you're a certain age, usually probably like 10 years younger than me. Like it's like a group of people that just like damn near have a relationship with Kanye West. Like some of my older cousins got a relationship with Prince, just where that is. And that was at where his social capital was. So after recognizing that, but we got to present to him that like, you want to be Walt Disney. You want to end up being like a JP Morgan. You want to be, you know what I'm saying, where every step he walked through, as far as I'm concerned, his social capital carried and moved it to many different places. Now, Kanye's one example, but actually, I'm going to just say the whole genre of hip-hop itself, because at 43, I clearly remember walking in record stores and damn near having to go like in the furthest back corner to the side, and it'd probably be like a rack this big. I never would be thinking to myself like, I'm watching the NBA Finals the other day, and it's like ABC is leading with MOP playing Annie Up. I'm like, this is, and all the commercials, just it's. But that was the social capital that was needed. I think really to take it a step further, the coolness of our people, coolness of black folks is the key social capital element that was very needed for America itself. Because as much as, clearly, these nations use the American dollar for trading and international trade, it was always this whole concept of America and American exceptionalism. But inside that, it was the creativity of our people that made it hit. Elvis shaking his legs and us in fashion and all of that stuff. You take away a lot. I used to always say, like, you take Detroit away from Michigan and it's Montana. You take black people away from America, this is Norway. It's the social capital to me that gives it its value. Because now it heightens whatever you're doing. Now, clearly you want the control of it, but it's never going to be like leverage. It's like when we start identifying like, nah, y'all need us to even make this worth a thing.
Right. For sure. I mean, it is that we bring value to the space, but it's about like who controls that value, that value is being used for what. But when I say that like capitalists don't need social capital, what I mean is like understanding that in a structural way. It's like looking at a basketball player and he's 9 foot. Right, and he can dunk the ball without jumping.
I got you.
He can jump if he wants to.
I got you.
But the game is structured in a way where he does not have to do it.
Okay, I give you that because I give you that. So basically, because
the system is biased towards the system works for them.
It's the analogy I always say. It's like we hooping, but it's their backyard.
Exactly. So a priori, like before anything, like the system is benefiting them. It is already structured. The rules is already working in favor of them. What we need to do, right, in opposition, right, as a opposing class, as a different class, say, you know what, we don't have the same rules, right? We don't have those advantages. What do we have? We have the ability to organize, and we have the ability to build people power, right? But it doesn't stop there because we can't eat social capital, right? We actually need the capital. And so it is like how we are building, right, that social capital, those connections, right, that solidarity in order to take back the means of production. So what the capitalists have stolen from us, we are organizing, right, collectively, right, to take back and so forth. Just real quick in terms of a local example, right? We have a community benefits ordinance, right? People power brought that into fruition, right? In 2015, 2016, Detroit is organized. They say a lot of development is coming here. We want something on the books to mandate, to ensure that when development comes in, right, they sit down with community and negotiate a community benefits agreement. You got to be doing stuff that benefits us, right? So we have that ordinance on the book. We didn't get the version that we wanted, right? Councilmember Scott Benson put up, his version, so kind of raised some of the thresholds. But we still have this thing, right? So when developers come in, they have to sit down with community and negotiate a community benefits agreement. There is a development being proposed right now, right, connected to, I was about to say Cobo Hall, but the Huntington Place, right? We know if you grew up in Detroit, it's Cobo. But they want to build a convention hall hotel, right, that is connected to Huntington Place, right? It's being led by the Sterling Group. And if anybody is familiar with the Sterling Group, it's a development group led by Gary Torgo, right? He is the head of Huntington Bank and so forth. Very powerful person, right, in the city of Detroit. One could argue probably the most powerful capitalist, right? I would probably put that forth, right? But they want to build this hotel. They want to build it with the help of a lot of public money, right? I'm forgetting the numbers right off the top of my head, but I believe it is the project is certainly over $75 million. And the public incentives are right close to right 100 million, something like that, right? We already know the deal. Because of this, the project will trigger our community benefits ordinance. But guess what? They don't want to do it. They don't want to do the community benefits process. So they have put in, right, a request to city council that they be let off the hook to do the community benefits process. What would make them, right, think they, like all of these other developers have came in, right, adhered to our local laws and did this, but they feel like they don't have to. And the reason why is because of who they are. They are very powerful developers and so forth. they feel like they don't have to follow the law.
Yeah.
Right? They don't have to follow these laws. They can do what they want. But on the other end of that, like me or you or any other regular Detroiter, we can't go out in there and be like, you know, like that's a speeding law, or like we can even take the land bank. The land bank has ordinances and laws around the way in which they allocate land and do land and sell land to Detroiters. They got to fix it up. As soon as Detroiters, right, don't meet these benchmarks and these standards and so forth, what they do? Oh, the law says we can take it, right? They have no leeway for us. We can't petition and sidestep, right, the law, right? But because, right, these developers hold so much power in our city, they feel like they do not have to follow the law. And so there's a concerted effort for developers now to sidestep our community benefits ordinance. People, we have to step up. We have to organize. This cannot happen. This sets a very dangerous precedent here in terms of how we, at the current moment, are able to. Yeah, I mean, it's not a bunch, but we do have the ability to step in and co-govern, if you will, and negotiate benefits right from some of these developers that is taking a bunch of our public money.
And it's so interesting, like when you speak of things like that, and thanks for uplifting that. But I mean, even what the Board of Police Commission is doing. Yeah. So even with like, you know, the historic election, it was actually more voters that came out during the last local election than I thought. At like, what is it, 20? You know directly, but I want to say 22%, like almost like between 22 and 23, which. I know you all look at that like, God damn. So, and I mean, these are registered voters. So this ain't even counting the people that are unregistered. Right. But that still was a lot just based on where things stand. And I do think people exploit apathy back to like, we want to not have an active 100%. Voting populace because that's strengthening that social capital. But acts like this and if that goes through, but definitely like what happened with the Board of Police Commissions when we have, and shout out to Victoria, love Victoria, and the work that she's done, specifically on making sure that like, all right, this body cam footage is going to get to the people. And now the FBI just steps in and is like, no, it's going to be an injunction on that. These are the things that lead to people saying like, man, I don't care. And it's a lot of acts that, as much as I do think that there are certain acts of voter suppression, it's a lot that I think is looking to feed people into apathy. And if you heighten apathy, that kills social capital. Because basically now what you're dealing with is like, we can do whatever we want to do. You heighten against that, and you have a very active populace, then now what happens is everything kind of starts changing, and it strengthens so much of that social capital. And I mean, this is so heavy on my mind and heart. And shout out to Brenda Butler, because I already know next time I see her, Brenda gonna be like, you need to be. I love it, and you are correct. But I mean, when in interviewing her, and she's, you know, in high school saying like, yep, I was right down there in Birmingham, and I leave high school, and we was walking around registering people to vote, which that's, you know, as a teenager. But like the whole playbook of the civil rights movement has been the playbook of every justice rights movement from there forward of how to do things. Absolutely. And this is still back to, like you say, the brilliance of our organizing, planning, who we are, and our social capital moving forward. Absolutely. It's you know, Brenda Butler's right here. She, you know, she just champion. She just like haphazardly saying like, yeah, you know, it was Fred Shuttlesworth that told us that's what we was gonna do. And I'm like, damn, hold on, Brenda, you gotta slow down. I gotta contextualize who he is to America, especially Black America. And I, you know, I'm like, when did you know it was like getting heavy? It's like, well, you know, when the church was bombed, and that was Martin Luther King's brother's church that a lot of people didn't. I'm like, wait a minute. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, these people are here. We've seen it. It can definitely move and happen, but we got to feel as though we're a part of it. And acts like that, and even back to like, I mean, that I know people will say that was long ago, but it still has lasting effects. What happened in Flint and no consequence happening, because this is what checks a lot of people out. And you know how I feel. It's definitely an argument for apathy. Lord knows my OGs like a Brenda would say, you sound crazy. I understand the argument for it, but also, as much as I think it's acts for voter suppression, I think now it's a lot more acts in hiding that apathy.
Absolutely. I don't think it's either or. It's both. It's complex. It's all of that type of stuff. Apathy is a real thing. Like folks, you know, I do this work on the ground. When we have those conversations, folks like, I done checked out the system. And it's because of what you bring up, which is really, really important, is that like, like I know your audience is really in tune with a lot of the history because you reveal and you supply a lot of that. But of course, like Detroit was a hotbed for radical political movement.
Big time.
Right? You look at the 1960s, you look at the 1970s,
Yeah.
the League of Revolutionary Black Workers, the Republic of New Africa. You had Ken Cockrell with Dare and like
shit, the Nation of Islam.
The Nation of Islam.
Shrine of the Black Madonna.
One is here, Shrine of the Black Madonna.
Yeah.
Right. So like we are not newcomers when it comes to, like you said, building the social capital, fighting the powers that be, and so forth.
Yeah.
It's only that there has been certainly a concerted effort. You mentioned what happened to Coleman Young, right? When he was in office, they certainly wanted to move him out of the way. A different kind of mayor, but Kwame was somebody who was under siege as well.
Yeah. Right? Right now, I would urge people. We're going to be doing a benefit for him because Chokwe Antoine Lumumba is under indictment, and not just him. I mean, when we look across the board, and hence, I'm definitely gonna have Mary's back if anything presents itself. But the waves of what's happening to all executive leadership right now and what's happening with these FBI indictments is January 6ers are getting their, they damn near gonna get, money as repairs for what the goofy shit they did. But like, we look at New Orleans, we look at New Jersey, we look at Newark, we look at like so many black executives and what they're facing. We even look at what's happening in Atlanta. You know what I'm saying? So like, this is very intentional. And I would go as far as to say this is even further back intentional. Absolutely. I mean, as much as certainly people know Marion Barry for the, for the incident in the hotel room. But at the same time, them people in D.C. was like, nah, Marion stood with us. The reason he had support was because the people walked with Marion.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it's no secret that the powers that be recognize a very fervent, organized, radical black community and the threat that imposes on the status quo, right? The FBI is on record saying like, yo, we have to stop the emergence of a black messiah.
I mean, hold up. I mean, the roots, even though clearly I think information has come out that J. Edgar Hoover probably had some black in him for whatever reason. But the roots of the FBI, before it's even the FBI, is established because of Marcus Mosiah Garvey and what the UNIA did.
No doubt.
Then they say, okay, we can also run parallel to get, these Sicilians that, we feel like got some black in them because of the Moors, you know what I'm saying? And they attacked the mob as well. But the reason it exists, it started on compromising black unity. I mean, if you watch that MLK documentary on IFC, and this stands out in my mind, but it's like he has an office of 60 people. Of the office of 60 people, they say on record, 40 of them became informants. And when I say that, I'm not an informant at that time and what you're dealing with. And I mean, some of this is just from, and Lord knows I ain't connected to it, but just my understandings of those that have been connected in street economy. It's not like, that person signing up to snitch. It's the conditions of whatever they're facing. So I'm not dismissing the act of providing information, but just something as simple as during that time before he's murdered, he goes on a trip like it just for his family, and even as he gets there, bunch of agents.
Absolutely, and to me, that is a clear example of the way. Obviously, there is a concerted effort, right, to attenuate the power that we have, the power that we can create. And here in Detroit, I mean, we have a history of building that type of power, but over the decades, it has been eroded because, right, the system has taken from us, it has set us back to the point where we feel like, man, we done tried this power building thing, we done tried, right, engaging in the political system, formal politics, electoral politics, and so forth, it still has not gotten us where we need to be. And therefore, it concretizes and it exacerbates, right, that type of frustration and apathy that you talk about. And there are many examples of the people of Detroit coming out and saying, we don't want this. And the powers that be do it anyway. We have an example of that right now with the data centers, right? Detroit People's Platform, we put out a survey, right? We wanted to know how Detroiters, right, felt and feel about data centers. Because right now, City Council, right, led by Council Member Scott Benson in District 3, he has a working group where he is trying to think about data center policy, right? And that's hard to do when you haven't engaged the community, right, around those policy pieces. How do you know what we want? So we decided to do that work. And what we found out is that overwhelmingly, Detroiters don't want data centers. About 70% of our respondents say, we don't want this, right? An even higher percentage say, we don't want tax incentives being used on data centers. And 65% said that they would support a moratorium. So right now, right, sitting on Mayor Sheffield's desk is a 2-year moratorium on data centers that had been passed by City Council, right? And so, right, all of those pieces are in place. I think what the survey shows is that there is a lot of discontentment, a lot of frustration, a lot of fear around data centers. And our survey revealed that Detroiters just don't know enough about data centers, particularly like low-income residents.
Yeah.
So you have all of these, right, residents that we can demonstrate are against data centers. What is the city of Detroit going to do? Because I guarantee you, if they ram through these data centers and Councilmember Scott Benson puts forward legislation that fast tracks data centers, the construction of data centers being built in our community, it's going to further, right, increase the type of apathy that we see in our community.
So two points on that, and you got sports history. You know, I love sports too, history. But I look at this like it's sports, it's competitive. You know, and the analogy, like I said, we are hooping in their backyard. So
I like that.
Out of bounds, the changes,
exactly.
You know, where the line for
that ain't a three.
where the line for backside shot. Yeah, this ain't no 2-pointer. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You know, what's a foul? You know what I mean? It's. We hooping in their backyard. We known it. So we just got to dig deeper. And because that's how we look at it. We can't also have a belief of like, it's going to be a destination where we win the game. No, it's not like that. This is what it is. And yep, we are. But we still got to go to the rack. We still got to, we still in it.
Still got to play.
We still got to play. Because even if this is the other thing about our people. Even when we don't play, we playing. If you check out, you're still too much of a threat.
Absolutely.
It's still, I mean, you know, it's so unique with all of this, you know, and you're in this as well. I mean, black men in certain settings and places, just for the way I talk of just what that brings. Absolutely. You want to check out, you can't check out. Absolutely. Because it's still too threatening. Is you know what I'm saying? It's like, damn, why your older brother sitting on the sideline? He cool, everything good. You know what I'm saying? Nah, man, you're playing whether you want to play or whether you don't. So my thought process is we need to lace them up with a strategy for victory. Yeah, they figured that out, and then we got to do something else. And this actually goes into, I think, other brilliance of who our people are. And Lord knows, I don't think he's celebrated, but you could argue he's the greatest basketball player ever. So, like, when at the time Lou Alcindor, who now is Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, enters UCLA as, like, a champion in high school, they was like, you know what? Forget that. We going to ban dunking in college basketball. Like, straight up. Yeah, this is what happens.
100%.
So, what does he do? He turns around, creates the hot skyhook, which is the most unguardable shot.
Right.
We got it in us.
Right.
It's like, all right, they banned that, so we got to figure out how we going to operate. Is it fair? Hell no, but it ain't never been fair for us. So, like, let's not even romanticize where fairness goes and the victory happening and us popping champagne. It is what it is. Absolutely. We got to get into what our skyhook is. And when it comes to those data centers, even when we had this discussion, I mean, the other reality just on a national level, and you the one that said it, and it crystallized well. Yeah, this is one of the few issues where rural communities, suburban communities, and urban communities are all in line saying, hell no, we don't want that nowhere near us.
And that's dangerous for folks.
That's some hell of a social capital.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's been some political leaders that have moved forward with it and been ousted, recalled in efforts in places where they usually don't even organize.
Absolutely.
So, like, the other reality is I got to look at this from the international perspective and where America stands. The material's not just needed for these data centers, but a lot of the things that are done. I mean, these. These are materials that are refined in nations that the definition of how refinement has happened and what is happening are have strong relationships with China, India, Pakistan, Russia, Nigeria, but don't have the strongest with America.
Absolutely.
So a lot of the materials to move forward and fulfill these data centers, I don't know if it's going to happen. This is where I think a lot of these data centers kind of got to be adrift, because if you've invested in it, you kind of got to get moving on some of it, because if you don't, we going to find out like that Wizard of Oz that ain't nothing back there. And sometimes all you got to do is raise enough of a fight. I meet Theo because of the Means Logistical Park that now is over in Highland Park, which I still kind of look at as like, you helped us get to a point of a community victory. Yeah. Because for a while, just due to what we videotape, what I put up on Detroit is different. And a while it slowed down development of that space where, it's been built, but it may be one of the most unoccupied warehouses with that much land that you've ever seen. So like, I mean, it gets a little bit of action and everything, but really ain't nothing happening there. Because for the longest, when you looked up Means Logistical Park, you would see me saying, hey man, they trying to put some bullshit in our neighborhood. Exactly. And then you will be giving more information. My dad talking, Miguel talking. Exactly. You know what I'm saying? Like, it was like, oh no. And this is back to the snake eating its own tail. So everything that we're looking for before they could even really execute it, now it's like, oh man, we need heightened everything, because that looked like people gonna protest, burn stuff down. So it slowed everything down.
Absolutely. And I want your audience to really know this. We were talking about speculation and like who controls development in our community, and obviously as these like free market actors. Yeah, a lot of that is smoke and mirrors. And we have numerous examples here in the city of Detroit, right? In 2023, right, led by the Illages and Stephen Ross, they proposed the District Detroit. Yeah. Part 2, right?
Yes.
Remember?
Expanding what exists now.
Exactly. It was already an iteration introduced, right, in 2013, 2014 with Little Caesars Arena. They never made good on that. So in 2023, they come back, say, we got this District Detroit, we want to do A, B, and C. They wanted to introduce, 10 new developments, in this particular area. Those developments would introduce over 1 million square feet in new office space downtown. They also want to do hotels, and some residential and so forth. They have yet to start construction on any of the projects but one. Yeah. And the only reason they have started construction on that is because they agreed to kind of build some dorms that was not in the original District Detroit plan for the Michigan Innovation Center that is being
over
built
there.
Now. So they need this dorm space. So District Detroit, the Illa just said, we'll do that. That's the only reason that one building is being built. So they made all of these promises based on speculation about what the market needed. What Detroiters did during that time, and they were going through a community benefits process, because remember, they received over $800 million in public money, for that project. And Detroiters said, this is a bad use of our public money, because they are building so much office space. Look at the office space vacancy rates
already
downtown.
Unoccupied.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And you want to bring more office space here? This, on its face, is not a sound business decision. But they don't care about that. What they do care about is the speculative nature of it and what it brings them, not us, what it brings them in terms of value, on paper, the smoke and mirrors, and the fictitious commodity making and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, I think, man.
And that's and one more, that's the same thing with data centers. That is the same thing with data centers. Yeah. This is a speculative bubble. I got, folks have to understand that. Go and read on this. Yeah. 65%, of our national GDP, is based on speculation on AI.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. So, and so people know gross domestic product, meaning like a lot of what it is, it's just the idea. And what I say, like the materials that it's going to need to like just execute one of these, especially due to this federal administration and God knows what the hell is happening. I mean, the rates become a lot more variable, and, in the waves of stuff, and Lord knows, I mean, I ain't waving no Chinese flag, no President Z shirt or nothing like that, but I can say, in the arcs of, international relations, I think America offered a better deal than the territories that were colonized by a France or Britain, because it's and we rather vote for somebody. I'll never be a king. And, China and Russia and India, but more so China's going to a lot of these nations saying look, We ain't trying to be involved in your politics. This is what we do. We want to build it, and we want to get like first right of refusal on whatever y'all do. You know, like even what Nigeria is happening, which is a way better deal than America stepping in and putting a base here and, you know, sending somebody to college and now you become the leader. Like, that's just, nah, man, we don't want to do all that.
Absolutely.
Here we go. You can set it up and do your own thing.
Absolutely.
And that right there is what's making monumental shifts, even more so. So when I say this, I probably need to like, you know, talk to Abayomi, but in my mind, and I'm starting developing it in this theory, but the shifts that are happening internationally, especially when we think of, as they say, like the global South, but more so South America and in Africa and some of those other Asian nations, just due to, you know, China stepping in and Russia, like some of these nations just stepping in basically and say the BRICS nations stepping in saying, look, we gonna set y'all up where y'all got your own stuff to do with. I'm going to say that I think some of this economically is changing some of these nations even more so than, quote unquote, the changes from colonization to independence.
Oh, no doubt. Absolutely. You know, like this mad scramble around AI, it's a real thing, right? It is a piece of technology that has serious impacts on how production takes place, how economies grow, how nation states do their thing. But I think the thing that's different between particularly China, right, in the US, is that in China, AI is seen and treated, right, as a public utility and as a public good, and is being driven in that type of way. I mean, you know, we can have a debate about like state plan, you know, economies and all of that type of stuff. But the key difference, right, what is going on the American side is being driven by
speculation.
Billionaires.
Yeah. It's driven by speculation that I think a lot of people, and this was a very key economic point that still stands out in my mind. Like, I want to say, what was it? This may have been like, damn, time goes. Maybe about 4 or 3 years ago. You remember when, I forget that credit union, that bank in Silicon Valley. I forget the name of it.
I know what you're talking about. I'm forgetting the name.
So it was a bank in Silicon Valley that crashed, and they're like, damn, why would this one bank have so much impact on everything that's happening? Because inside this one bank that wasn't that far from San Francisco, maybe like 60% of these nations' venture capital was in there. So if you guys get the whole concept, like the way they sell venture capital, I got a good idea. Give me some money. And it's like, yeah, I'll give you some money, but it got to be in this bank.
That's right.
So technically, I don't even know how much of that money really got. But like, these are like the type of things that happen. So when this bank crashed, it's like, damn, how did this, you know, happen to everybody? And you know, they played it off on, I think, the guy and his girlfriend, and the girlfriend did these weird rap videos, and it's like, how did this happen? I'm like, nah, that was a lot more powerful than that. Absolutely. You know, we probably need to look at his parents that taught at Stanford or something. Like, it's more to that story that I'm sure 20 years from now somebody gonna write a book about, and I'm gonna be like, I knew it was more to that. But still, even that. But you guys can just even understand it. Like, okay, for sure, I'll loan you some money. It's just gonna be, I'm gonna keep it in my bank.
It's some serious problems coming, right? You know, like you point out, with so much capital concentrated and invested in this one particular sector. When you have failures, you're going to have a chain reaction, a domino effect, and it's going to affect a lot of people, right? A lot of people's 401k is dumped into a lot of these processes. Shout out to Tawana Petty, right, around digital justice, but she educated me on a lot of this stuff. Like the history of AI is much deeper, right, than a lot of people realize. Like, its connections to eugenics, right, and white supremacy and all of this type of stuff. But then also, too, the fact that, right, the speculative nature of AI and data centers, as we've been talking about, but the fact that there is no, right, business model to monetize it yet.
No.
There is no way to package AI yet and to say, oh, this is how it actually makes people money. On the contrary, right now, AI is being used to contract the workforce, right? It is being used to take away jobs, right, which will then attenuate the middle class, right? It's already had incredible effects on like working class people and so forth, the way in which things are right, put into automation and so forth. Now that's going to be happening with bankers and right, everything else. So not only is there's no business model, it actually right hurts working class people.
We're gonna have a longer discussion. I need to get Honeycomb back anyway, or Tawana
Shout
Petty
out
as
to
well.
Tawana.
But yeah, man, as always, a rich one. If people want to connect, find out more about platform, how do they connect?
You can go on our website, DetroitPeoplesPlatform.org. You can hit me up if you want to get into the fight. You want to do some organizing, some power building that social capital, as the good brother Kari mentioned, building some of that social capital so we can bring into fruition the Detroit that we all want and that we all need. Hit me up, Theo at DetroitPeoplesPlatform.org.
Always great. This was long, and this was definitely got me energized. I can't think of something cooler.
This wasn't a half an
hour. No. Wait, we were overtime, but I love it, man. I can't think of nothing cooler on Juneteenth and sit and get the game from you, man. But I gotta hit you with now. I'm working on these iterations of some new Detroit what if questions. Yeah, I think I know which one you gonna hit me with.
Yeah, I seen your live cast the other day. Dope,
okay,
dope. Yeah,
cool.
Yeah.
So let's hit you with this one first. So you get to choose one of these classic Detroit moments and where to be at. I think in my gut, I think I know what you're gonna pick though. All right, so you get the Bad Boys Championships Pistons. You back in the locker room. Champagne, Isaiah Thomas, Rick Mahorn.
That's gonna be hard to beat. I'm just tell you already, guys, because I was 12 years old at the time, so I was in it.
Man, it was like yeah. Now that was one hell of a rally. Y'all remember that as a kid?
Absolutely.
All right, so that's option one. You get the night Coleman Young is elected as mayor. That night, back in the day, you kicking it. It's like, whoa, beat this racist.
That's
number two. That's number two. Okay. And let's see. For number three, let's see, like where do I go? Okay. I don't think you're gonna pick this one, but I want to uplift it more. I'm gonna plan this because it's our era now. Okay, as time went on, and I think this was actually it's so funny because I think that rappers were hating on them for real. But it was an era where like MC Hammer took hip hop to a level where it's like you couldn't think of it. Hence, he was, no Hammer Time was on the front of the back-to-back chart. Bigger than we ever thought it could be. And during like his historic run, he shoots a video in the city of Detroit, Joe Louis Arena. It's the Put Me in the Mix video, and it's like him running through Go Ball and stuff. So you're at that. That concert also had, who else was at that concert? This was like close to the NWA concert that got shut down and stuff. But like in that era, I want to say Houdini's on that concert. And like this is prime version of them. This is like Escape Houdini. You got MC Hammer in his prime. JJ Fad is there, 3-5 Sample because Hammer's there. So you get the option of that show as well. I don't know who from the D opened up. It may have been Detroit's Most Wanted. It was Detroit's Most Wanted.
Okay, yeah. I was a Hammer fan. Like if folks don't admit they used to like MC Hammer.
No, Hammer, it was too legit to quit. Just took it. That was way over the top. Exactly. And then like right after like the next album after it, the gangster rap Hammer, it was too much of a at the same time.
Yeah, but like what's going on?
Yeah.
No, but that time when you talk about Hammer, it does represent a cool moment for me in Detroit.
Part of, and I still think like we in the same era, like, okay, one of the coolest people ever to me my whole life, Deion Sanders. But some of Deion Sanders was cooler because Hammer was on the sideline.
That's right.
Watching Deion.
That's right. Amplify him for sure.
Yes.
And that was the Hammer effect.
Yes.
But as bad as I want to pick the Bad Boy Pistons, because I remember that time, and that's when I was just right, you know, I was in middle school and you know, a sports fan, and of course, right, we love our Pistons and so forth. I'm gonna have to go with Coleman Young, right? Above all, I'm a history buff, and I love my city. I love the Black power that is associated with the city of Detroit, and that's what that represented, right, in 1974, right, as Coleman Young, against all odds, right, a city that was changing demographically, that was dealing with a lot of strife in the Black community. You know, at that time, there was a lot of police brutality. A lot of Black folks was being shut out of economic opportunities with the city, and Coleman Young represented radical change, not just change, radical change that uplifted our people and really put us on a pathway to right, I would say like a lot of Black prosperity, right? In the 1980s, right, Detroit had the highest rates of Black home ownership, right, in the country. We had some of the highest rates of Black entrepreneurship in the country, right? I heard you having a discussion about Barton Cable and so forth. We had Mel Farr, and you know, he wasn't a you know, good businessman, I would say, but he had the argument. He had the biggest car dealership in the country, so. Shout out to Coleman A. Young.
I'm with it. Yeah. That's the new project. And I'm gonna shoot some to you. Shout out to Khan. We started this Detroit What If. So we're just taking imaginative takes on like if this could happen. And these are things that possibly were planned. We just not gonna have like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, what if LeBron James gets drafted by the Pistons? Which I guess you could. Nah, man. Everybody knew LeBron was going number one. You know what I'm saying? It's gonna be what if Joe Dumars was smart enough to draft Carmelo Anthony?
Exactly. That's a huge what if. We at least we was gonna get one more championship.
Talk about at least. You know, like we already pre-started it because that's on the list. I think that changes the trajectory of LeBron's career.
Hey, talk about it for sure.
Because Melo would have been winning, which would have changed. Like maybe LeBron leaves Cleveland, or I don't know, but I definitely think it changes.
And then he run into a buzzsaw.
I forgot. Yeah, he ain't dropping that goddamn.
For sure.
You know, which a lot of Pistons fans hated him because it seemed like on his epic 23 straight points, he took a few more steps than dribbles.
A few. I was at that game, by the way. So.
Oh, man, it's so weird, man, because, like, you know, I'm sure America was cheering that on, but Detroit was like, damn, you ain't gonna call that.
Exactly. Like, he ain't the king yet. He ain't Jordan yet. Come on.
It's like, you know, I'm definitely from the Iverson era. They be like, he carrying it, but it was definitely a couple. Like, if this the ball, LeBron did one of these. That's the 2.5 step. You know, nowadays it's just like you don't even
do what you want.
You know what?
Walk all the way down the court.
You know, be like, Giannis get down the court in 2 dribbles. It's like, all right. I mean, you know, at this point, I guess so.
Yeah.
I love it. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you, my brother.
All right.
All the time.
Peace.
Detroit is different. Detroit is different.